What's the rudest or most wrong thing a mental health professional said to you? I had a psychiatrist who was convinced I was anorexic even though I wasn't. It really sucked because my therapist and my psychiatrist worked at the same company, and they had a policy where they don't help people with eating disorders. So even though I went to a specialist and they confirmed I didn't have an eating disorder, I was still banned from that facility and lost my long-term therapist. Nothing. She fell asleep in her chair while writing notes. I was talking about the death of my parents. I was 16 and never went to another therapist. My therapist, whom I've just discontinued, would literally order a meal and eat it right in front of me while literally saying nothing. She did that for the entire year I wasted with her. I was just watching this lady eat her food while saying nothing, only then to give me snarky two-word replies. At that time, I moved from Berdsk, a small city in the region, to Novosibirsk. In the new school, preventative conversations were held with a psychologist. All of the children told about their dreams, hobbies, and shared their views on life. I said that I love rock and I'd like to spend my youth traveling or working. Apparently, the psychologist wasn't impressed. In front of the whole class, she said, "Are you from Berdsk? That explains why you're so weird. Everything in your city is not of this world." Interpretation of an offensive phrase in Russian hinting that you're crazy. When they say things like, "Okay, I understand how you're feeling, thank you for telling me that," and then proceed to ignore most of the things you've said. At 14, telling my shrink about how I was bullied in school. "Did they make fun of your nose?" "No." And that's how I found out I have a big nose. Also a terrible counselor. You should always ask open-ended questions like, "What did they make fun of you for?" instead of, "Did they make fun of this explicit thing?" "Oh, did they call you chubby dum-dum or little fat ears?" Oh, this is what happens when a school bully takes a fast track to psychiatry. Great little comedic comments adding up into our very serious subject matter here today. But really, I'm truly shocked at how insensitive some of these so-called professionals can be. I was dealing with a lot of family issues at the time, and my ex had just broken up with me that week, so I was taking it fairly hard. My therapist said, "It's because they found someone better." And when I said no and tried to explain, this therapist just dug in deeper that my ex had dumped me because they found someone better than me. This didn't happen to me but to my late father, and I'm still angry. My brother, his only son, had a nervous breakdown after our mother died. He was good through and through. It was like losing two people at once. My father believed, sadly, that my brother would find his way home, but he never lived to see him again. We know he's alive out there. Now, I worked in a funeral home that assisted the coroner's office. If someone passes away, they can take the fingerprints to identify them. Bottom line is, there are many ways that they can identify a deceased person. My father was a trucker, blue-collar kind of guy. When he lost his leg, he lost his ability to work, and he hated it. I'm convinced he would have preferred to die in his truck. He was a provider. But he was a good father and loved his children. The therapist asked why he was depressed, and he said he misses his son. She said, "You know, there's a good chance he's been dead for a while, yet you've continued to live." He was quiet when we got into the car, and I knew something was wrong. Finally, he told me what she'd said. I called the therapist and asked where the frick she got off putting that idea in his head. The man had lost enough. He refused further counseling, and who could blame him? I went to see a counselor who was supposed to help me deal with being repeatedly mistreated when I was younger. The witch kept asking me, "But didn't it feel good? It felt good, right? Just admit it felt good," until I was a sobbing mess. I'm female, and the therapist was also female, which made it all the more difficult to deal with coming from a woman. Mine told me that my dad was in hell after he had committed self-deletion. I was 12. I ran out of there faster than anything. 3 times being sent home and psych ward visit later. "I'll just go back to work, you'll be fine. You don't need different meds." A couple years ago, my partner was trying to find a therapist. In the first few appointments, this woman told her that if she didn't start doing certain things, I'd burn out and leave her. I'd never spoken to this woman in my life, and she knew nothing about me. My girlfriend never went back, after she struggled for a few weeks thinking it might be true before telling me what she said. "Well, you've certainly got a lot going on there," followed by an awkward silence and nothing helpful. It was the first time ever opening up on that level for me. Real bad experience. In high school, I was pretty difficult because of some real intense crap happening in my life. I wasn't on anything or violent or flunking out. However, I had a super rough family home life, as well as some pretty troubling encounters with the opposite gender, and I withdrew because of it. My parents were very Sunday Christian, meaning while at church they're the best Christians ever, but the teachings did not make it home. They still don't understand why only one of their 6 kids talks to them, that kind of thing. Anyway, they gave us no privacy whatsoever. They were always in our phones, our bags, and our rooms, or just in every aspect of our life it offered them control, and I knew it would be no different when they found me a counselor and you know her. Their words. Guys, they sent me to therapy with the pastor's wife. It became super clear she was telling them things immediately, but I held out hope until I couldn't anymore, because I didn't really have proof. I ended up telling her that I got an offender bender, but there was no damage, so it was all good. Well, she told my parents right when I left, I guess, because when I showed up at home, my dad demanded to see my bumpers. They won't admit what happened to this day, but they never made me go again, so there's that at least. Also, I guess this turned out mostly about my parents, but screw them and that so-called counselor too. In short, cheap parents hired a therapist that they knew would give them info. I got suspicious and confirmation after I told a ridiculous lie, and my parents sat me down to talk about it when I'd never told them anything. Since it was a lie, it took years to trust any adult after that, which I still struggle with as a 34-year-old. I was told that there was no point in continuing therapy because I was emotionally devoid and was wasting her time. It was a licensed therapist that I was referred to by my doctor after an emotional breakdown. Ironic much? Her comment came on our 3rd appointment. We'd never clicked, and she had made judgmental comments about my parenting choices in the 1st session, so there wasn't any trust there. I've since found a new therapist who's amazing, and now, 5 years on, I've left a toxic marriage, dropped 2 of the 3 meds I was taking, and am generally thriving. While her comment initially stalled me and left me feeling that there was no hope, I'm now genuinely happy and loving my life. I'm also halfway through my studies to become a counselor myself. I use my creativity with art and crafts as a coping skill and as something that gives me extra purpose in life. A psychologist told me that doing so is maladaptive. I didn't go back. You'll never do an important job like doctor, veterinarian, firefighter, or lawyer or counselor. You'll probably end up in Walmart your whole life. I was 8 years old and still remember how mad my parents were. I'm currently working at an international factory, keeping my money to open my own shelter for stray animals and training them. Got 2 certifications, one for training and one for cooking. Maybe I'll end up cooking new recipes for the stray animals at my shelter, huh? I know a guy who became a dentist out of spite after a conversation like this with a career guidance guy in high school. I was having panic attacks daily, and the meds he gave me made my anxiety worse. Turns out I was just having bad reactions to SSRIs, and that was all he kept trying like a moron. Anyway, I was in his office and he seems to be taking it personally that all the SSRIs he's put me on are giving me seriously bad side effects. Have you just given up then? The moron asks. Do you just want to be like this the rest of your life? Obviously fricking not, that's why I'm in this office trying new medications. I was so angry and yet also having a panic attack at the same time. I ended up just walking out and finding a new psychiatrist later. The day you think you know everything is the day you'll kill someone. It's a pretty popular saying in my side of healthcare. There's definitely some wisdom to that. Being arrogant enough to assume that your first general guess is absolutely right with no room to correct for any new info that comes out isn't a great trait to have at the best of times, but in any medical field? My god, yeah, you could kill someone. And here's our next story about a deluded quack simultaneously trying to make a quick buck off her patients. You need to find religion and also buy the self-help book series that I wrote. For this, it's important to know that I live in Germany. I saw a psychologist once who treats and diagnoses adults with Asperger's. I was there for my 2nd diagnostic interview, and my mother was with me to be interviewed as well. She told the doctor about my sensory issues, especially with noise, because I'd occasionally scream and punch walls and throw stuff around if I was too overloaded with a sound. The psychologist just said something along the lines of, well, 100 years ago people like this would have been treated rather differently around here, huh? And laughed in our faces. Even if he wasn't talking about National Socialist euthanasia, which took place not quite 100 years ago, I still felt incredibly disgusted and angry. The entire interview with him was a disaster, but this was clearly the worst thing he did. Okay, this is actually my mum's story, but it is relevant. 1980s in the UK. My mum is pregnant with me, and my dad is, well, he's not a good person. My dad called my mum when she was out, asking her to come home. Mum thought he sounded odd, so asked a friend to come with her. Daddy Dearest is indeed completely blotto, which has brought out all of his angry tendencies, and he fires a 9mm, that God knows where he got it, at my mum. Missed, thankfully. The police are called, a standoff occurs, and it's hours before he's finally taken down. The psychiatrist who treats him afterwards tells my mum, who's bracing herself for a good old-fashioned divorce, not to leave him as he wouldn't cope. F that noise. Unfortunately, they did succeed in guilting Mum into staying, but she got out a few years later and gave me the best childhood. She passed a few years ago now, but damn, she was awesome. Holy frick, I just remembered my ex-husband's psychiatrist called me and implored me to make it work. And a few months later, he tried to off me in a substance-induced rage. Screw all of that. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I had a therapist tell me that my soul, long before I was born, chose my parents and subsequent horrible upbringing so that I could learn from it. By this logic, of course, the victim is always in control and the person ruining their life is helpless. Argue with that logic. Needless to say, I never saw her again. And some clarification, the therapist subscribed to the just world theory, which is often but not always taught in Western psychology. The problem, of course, other than the victim blaming, is the blatant narcissism required to believe someone else exists only to fulfill your soul's destiny by harming you. The people who do this to their kids are 100% responsible for their own behavior, not their targets. I remember giggling to myself after I got home, thinking I should have just kicked her really hard in the face and gone, well, guess your soul must have chosen that for you, huh? I took a psych test, and when we were going over the results, the psychologist implied that all of my mental health issues were due to being too sensitive and were therefore my fault. I remember feeling broken for like a week afterwards, just crying when I was alone. The same guy wrote in my psych report that I was lying on my test, when I'd previously told him I self-report very poorly. If I met this guy in a dark alleyway tomorrow, I'd probably break his self-important nose. I went to see a psychiatrist because I was having symptoms of PTSD after an ex tried to unalive me when I left him, then stalked me, forced his way into my apartment, and committed the unspeakable act on me. The psychiatrist, an older man, told me that I needed to work on my physical appearance and demeanor to be more feminine and demure. Because quality men weren't attracted to women who looked and behaved like me, and if I ever tried to get involved in any other relationship without making myself more appealing to quality men first, I'd end up right back in the same situation. Mine just said, maybe you shouldn't be here. I had better luck with medication. I was fresh out of high school and really not doing very well. No friends, horrible relationship with my mum and stepdad, and nobody to confide in. I gave in after being pressured to see someone because mental health issues run in my family. I booked an hour-long assessment. I was in and out in 20 minutes. The guy completely dismissed me because I was young, and every young person goes through these things. Everyone worries about their future. This is totally normal. It took me 3 years to go back and was admitted after my second appointment. Do you ever have thoughts about not being alive anymore? Yes. Do you have a plan for not being alive anymore? Yes. Do you feel you're a danger to yourself or you'll hurt yourself before your next appointment? Yes. Great, I'll double your Prozac. See you next week. I was a nurse. I know if a patient says those sort of things, it's an instant 24-hour keep in the hospital or admission for monitoring. And I wasn't joking. I meant it 100%. I never went back to that guy. Events happened that kept me from following through instantly with my plan, but I'll never forget that jerk. I left the office thinking, well, even a guy that's paid to care whether I live or die doesn't care. That seals the deal. I had to go to the hospital because I'd sliced myself about 4 years ago. I sat in the room where there are multiple different people and cases going on, so there weren't any walls between the patients. And what does the head nurse do? Oh, we've got a cutter, to the whole damn room. You could see how uncomfortable the other nurses were, and even some policemen looking after someone else looked upset that she had decided to yell it to everyone. Made me feel like complete garbage on top of how I already felt at the time. Well, you make good eye contact and you're an engaging, interesting conversationalist. Clearly you can't have ADHD. My other patients are crystal addicts with no direction in life. You think your problems are as bad as theirs? This guy was apparently an ADHD specialist. I'd been seeing him to try and make sense of my crippling executive dysfunction and lifelong problems with attentiveness. He just spent our sessions telling me my problems weren't bad enough because apparently everyone with an attention disorder is a frickin' delinquent. Also, way to throw your other patients, who are surely coming to you to deal with their own demons, under the bus, my dude. I was explaining to a therapist that I used to run a cancer charity, and part of my depression came from talking to so many people who had lost someone or were in the process of losing someone and being an emotional sponge for them. The therapist then proceeded to tell me about their loved one who had died of cancer. My God, how did some of these people get their licenses? Also, there are idiots like me who have a better idea of conversational cues and safe areas than this bloody guy. Then again, it matches with all of my friends who've told me that they had to really shop around to find their first therapist. When I was 11, I started feeling a lot of anxiety and fear about going to school, church, or basically any place with a lot of people. My brother had been getting therapy for a while, so my parents set me up with a counselor at the same facility. The only session I went to started normally enough. We talked a bit to help get me comfortable. I described what I was experiencing, normal first season stuff. The counselor then asked me to close my eyes and imagine a situation where I felt anxious, and then when I did so, he instructed me to find Jesus there and go to him. Now, I grew up in a religious family, and here, nearly 20 years later, I still believe, but that was not what I was expecting out of an alleged medical professional. Long story short, we did that and nothing else repeatedly for the rest of the hour-long session, aka eternity for an anxious, uncomfortable child. I left with the impression that therapy was bullcrap, and I didn't seek out any mental health care until I was in my 20s. Turns out I've got depression and anxiety issues, and they respond pretty well to medication. If I'd had help from a young age, I might have been able to develop coping skills. Instead, I flunked out of college twice and developed an addiction to alcohol. Oh well, live and learn, I guess. In short, counselor tells young me to find Jesus, so I decide to just live with mental illnesses most of my life. I can't remember the exact wording, but essentially they told me that being an unspeakable act victim, both by a friend and an ex, was invalid because I was a man. And that really messed me up for a while. Made me afraid of getting psychiatric or therapeutic help again for a while until things got really bad. I went back, saw a better therapist at a different clinic, and she actually talked to me about how horrible that person was. It was really helpful. That's called solitary confinement. I'm calling the police right now, said by my family's counselor when she discovered my elementary school was locking up myself and several other students in tiny closets every day. When I was younger, my sister and mum weren't getting along, and my mum decided we'd see a family counselor. Most of my time with the counselor was easygoing, happy, and short, as I had nothing to do with my sister and mother arguing and screaming at each other all the time. That was until she asked me how school was doing and started digging into what my daily life was like. In 5th grade, I was caught trying to out one of my female teachers for putting down students and cursing at us too. She used to get a rise out of berating one particularly sweet and timid girl in the class. Well, the teacher caught me recording her cursing and sent me to detention for the rest of the year. Detention was 3 small rooms behind the principal's office, with room for just 1 student in each closet-sized cell. They would lock us in, and the only times we were allowed out was for lunch or to join other classes for wall sits in the middle of Arizona summers. We had to knock and ask to use the restroom, which was located in the principal's office area as well, so no chance to see other students. Usually, one of the small rooms, as we called them, was occupied by a mentally handicapped student who would scream and bang his head on the wall. Poor kid who had no clue why they were locking him up in a tiny room. Oh, and if any of us were really bad, they'd turn the lights off on us until whoever was acting up would shut up. This usually made the screaming guy go berserk until he hyperventilated or passed out. Countless days spent plugging my ears and choking back tears. I eventually gouged a small hole under the desk, which was permanently attached to the walls. I disassembled pens and would wrap a note around the ink cartridge, and then pass the note and pen through the wall to whoever was on the other side. This lasted for a large part of that grade, but they eventually found the pen hole and punished all of us with more wall sits in the sun while watching everyone else play at recess. I don't know who these people were running the elementary school, but this stuff changed my perception of the world pretty quickly. I thought I could trust anyone with authority, but after this, I pretty much laugh at anyone that thinks they have some sort of power or authority or seniority over another human being. The counselor called the cops, and we went straight to the school so I could show everyone where the rooms were. I was too terrified to go inside with all of the staff still inside the school. The officer and my counselor assured me that nothing bad would happen to me, but I did refuse to go. They told me the rooms were shut down, but I went a couple of years later and confirmed that they'd just closed them temporarily. A part of me still wants to go and see if they're still using those closets or cells today. Are you a lesbian because of trauma? In most cases, that's what happened. How do your parents deal with your orientation? I was not there about anything even remotely related to my orientation. I'd seen one therapist about various issues affecting me. After a number of sessions and exploration, we got to the cause of my problems being that my mum had died when I was young. I moved and started with a new therapist. I started explaining my background with, "My mum died," to which I got, "You can't blame it all on that. I get that therapists are trained to challenge your lines of thought, but that was annoying as frick." A psychiatrist put me on OxyContins because I told him if there was an antidepressant that made me feel like I do when I have oxys, then I'd feel much better. 10 years ago, things were a lot different, I guess. When I was in my early 20s, I was still a virgin at the time, and it was really upsetting me. A therapist told me it was a good thing, and then showed me pictures of transmitted diseases. She told me that they were God's punishment for immoral behavior, and 1 in 3 people had one. I told her that they were probably irresponsible people that didn't use protection, and she told me that rubber couldn't protect me from God's anger. She then prayed I remained a virgin until marriage, and that I'd no longer desire to commit the sin of premarital whoopee. Looking back, I should have reported her to some sort of therapist licensing board. Also, I've had plenty of fun since about a year after that, and still no diseases. I guess God just isn't angry enough at me. What family secret was finally spilled in your family? That my parents had to get married. They'd always told us they got married in 1961, but it was 1962, 3 months before my sister was born. What's amusing is that my father was an accountant who was insanely fast with math. Whenever he was asked how many years they'd been married, he'd be off by 1. My mother would correct him through clenched teeth, and then my father would nod and agree. When my paternal grandfather died, the federal government reached out to do a state funeral. He had been career Army and a colonel, so we didn't question it. Then the funeral came and they went all out. Huge procession, people showing up who were really big names, like heads of departments, senators, retired senators, people from the CIA and State Department. It was nuts, and we were all super confused. Turns out he was a key dude in the OSI during World War II, and when the OSI splintered into the CIA and Secret Service, he went the Secret Service route. He wasn't on White House detail, but instead worked in a covert office that dealt with counterfeiting and currency. He went blind when I was a toddler and retired from the Army. For whatever reason, he told no one about all his covert work with the OSI and Secret Service, and the only person who knew, my grandmother, was sworn to secrecy and never told anyone. My father grew up thinking he was just a colonel working on base. Only after his death were we given all sorts of cool crap like publications by him, lectures given by him, and all kinds of things from various things he did and was known for. All I knew him as was a blind old man who was perpetually smoking, drinking, and being a crotchety geezer. Turns out he was a bad mother effer, and all but none of us knew. My great-grandmother wasn't actually Mexican, but was rather adopted by a Mexican family from a Chinese family who was being kicked out of Mexico when railroad construction was over. She always had more typically Asian features but only spoke Spanish, and it was never really questioned. 23andMe is a hell of a thing. My mother is kid number 7 out of 10. My aunt, kid number 4, who was born in 1945, did her DNA test and found out that she has a different father from everyone else. She was devastated. There was always a rumor that there was an affair, but nobody talked about it. She has so many questions, but nobody's alive to answer her. My grandparents are first cousins. An uncle on the same side of the family is in prison for the assassination of a Mexican presidential candidate in the 90s. His family still says he was framed and is innocent. Oh boy, way to lead with a kind of eyebrow-raising secret and then completely overshadow it with a tale of murder and corruption. Has anyone made a movie about your family? This is kind of messed up, but my parents told me my mum had a bad back because I pushed on her spine during birth. This is what I thought all my childhood. I think I was in my teens when my older brother told me my dad pushed my mum during an argument and she fell and had to have surgery. I thought I ruined my mum's back my entire childhood, and those SOBs let me believe it. When I was 5 years old in 1988, Santa Claus left a Nintendo on our front porch. It was wrapped in newspaper, and my parents had no idea who gifted it to us. My dad particularly tried to figure it out. He was always suspicious that it had been a family friend. It was by far the best gift of the year, and we played it all the time throughout our childhood. My dad died in 2004. Last Christmas, my mum explained that she was the one who had bought it and surreptitiously placed it on the front porch. My dad really likes to be in control of things and had forbidden the purchase. She knew better. She didn't tell a soul for 30 years. Thanks, Mum. I see a lot of stories about people finding out that who they thought were their parents weren't the people raising them, and this one is a little bit different. My dad always thought his father who raised him wasn't his biological dad, and the father thought the same. He was treated terribly by his father because the father was told he couldn't have children and my father was born prematurely, but at a healthy weight. So everyone assumed that my grandmother had an affair and got pregnant with my dad. It was to the point where after my grandmother died, my grandfather failed to even mention to his new wife that he had a son and grandchild, me. Years later, my dad gets an ancestry DNA test for him and me. He finds out that his dad was actually his bio-dad. It was shocking and sad. Found out that my grandma had a baby as a teenager and was forced to give him up for adoption by my great-grandparents. 40 years later, he found us. The same thing happened to my mom. I'm 33 now. Older half-brother is roughly 35. I hold hope that I'll meet him one day. My father's brother killed 4 people when he was in high school. My father was the one who found out and told the police. My de facto uncle, he and my aunt never married but have been together since well before I was born, with a few hiccups, has a child with another woman. It became common knowledge when the girl was 6 and was starting to understand the situation. At first, it was a bit scandalous, but she's been welcomed with open arms by my entire family, including her half-siblings' maternal grandparents. She's treated the same as all the other kids her age. Her half-sister, my cousin, has a daughter the same age and they're best friends and go to the same high school. Totally inseparable, technically aunt and niece. She comes to all our family events and she's an awesome kid. We're all stoked to have her in our family. After my mum died, I found out the real story behind my grandparents' marriage. She came to my father's country to visit some of her relatives. Met my father, and after just 1 week, she asked him to marry her so she could stay in the country. My father accepted because he had no one else, and his parents were pressing him to get married already. But the highlight of the story is that over some time, the two of them fell in love with each other. Their love only grew over the time, and they were really happy together. My mother spent her last days very ill, and she would accept only my father by her bedside. He swears to this day that she was an angel sent from God to take care of him. I'm shocked that they got married just like that, out of the blue, and ended up loving each other so deeply. I can only hope to have as good and loving marriage as they had. My uncles are infamous criminals who killed multiple people. I thought they bred dogs. Well, they may have also bred dogs. Ha! My mum's family, she always heard that her uncles were at Ohio State since she was a teenager, and never learned until she was in her 30s that it was actually Ohio State Penitentiary because they were in the mob. About a month ago, my mother-in-law's 88-year-old sister revealed on her deathbed that her husband's best friend was actually the father of all 4 of her children. Her husband was a bullying grade-A jerk by all accounts. While everyone was shocked, no one was saddened by this news. Did the friend know? Yes, he contacted with all 4 of the children, the youngest is in his 50s, within hours of her passing. Also, one of the son's first comments was, "Is that why he gave me his old car when I needed one back in college?" My uncle served in Vietnam. While over there, his troop found a baby that had been orphaned or abandoned. They're not sure. My uncle was shipping back to Australia soon and wanted to adopt him, but my aunt said no. They'd only been married about 4 months when he was drafted, so while I don't agree with my aunt's actions and generally don't like her as a person, I can understand why she said no. My uncle's troop found a family to raise the baby, and that's the story the whole family knows. To clarify, I'm child-free, and if my husband was in this situation, I'd probably say no as well. It's not the fact she said no to adopting the kid that makes me dislike her for this, it's her reason. She's very racist against Asian people. Doesn't matter what part of Asia, she hates them. She's the kind of person who will yell, "Go back to your country," at random strangers who even vaguely look like they might have Asian ancestry. She also cut off contact with my cousin, her daughter, because my cousin's husband is half Japanese. She said in front of my family with no shame that if the kid hadn't been Asian, she would have said yes to adopting him. The secret is that my uncle and some other guys from his troop stayed in contact with the family and the kid, sending them money every month to help raise him and then help him go to university, and eventually helped him and his adoptive family move to Australia in the late 90s. My aunt and the rest of my family had no idea all this time. It only came out when my aunt and uncle divorced in 2017 and she had a forensic accountant go through their bank records. She worked at a bank for like 40 years and always noticed the money missing, but his reasons were always justified. Since we all know now, my uncle has introduced some of us to this guy and his family. They're really lovely people. It sounds like everyone won at some point in the story. The kid won by not being adopted by this woman and being financially supported. The family won by being introduced to the kid later in life, and the uncle won by divorcing the aunt. Everyone wins. We found out after my grandfather died that none of his 7 children with my grandmother were his, and that they all likely had different fathers. I only just recently heard about this, but my grandmother had gotten a little drunk with my dad and brother a month or so ago and started talking about our great-uncle Ferber. And from what I heard, he apparently killed quite a few people and buried them on some family-owned land in a swamp. The nanny I had when I was younger was actually my dad's attempted sister wife. She found out how bat-crap crazy he was and dipped. He's into polygamy and nearly had her convinced to be their third and everything. She came to her senses, thank God. He's not a nice man. My great-grandfather didn't die of cancer. He died from complications after being shot when one of his businesses was being robbed. Or so we'd heard. He also spent a lot of time in Atlantic City. He also had a lot of partners in Teamsters and other unions in coal country. Also, everyone called him Smiling Tony, but his name wasn't Tony. He died in the 60s, long before my time, but when my great-grandmother died 20 years ago, a very old guy showed up to the funeral in a white suit and all of the oldest people in my family kissed his hand. When I asked, no one knew who he was. My grandfather moved his family away from central Pennsylvania in the late 60s and disconnected from all of this. But there it is. I always wonder how long it will be before my neighbors figure out their daddy is a dealer or a little crooked. There was that one time in Christmas he got shot in the leg stealing from a farm and hobbled around for weeks. He's trying to go straight right now. I heard an absolute blowout fight like 2 months ago. As soon as the bigger kids left with the grandparents, the missus was smoking ice in the house, and he screamed at her about not doing that in the house, not wanting the kids to see. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was 28, I found out that my dad was not my biological father. The news came out via the following. My dad was battling depression and a number of other serious problems, so I had just flown home to try and take care of him and rescue him from my mum's wrath. My mum had verbally and emotionally beaten him down during their entire relationship. He loved her so much and he tolerated it. Well, during a solemn walk with my dad, as I tried to help him out, he confided that he's not my bio-dad. And he went on to tell me that he knew this all along, but my mum lied to him and tried to convince him that he was my bio-dad. He knew he wasn't, but he wanted to play the role. When I was 10 years old, my mum finally confessed this to him, and he was worried that upon hearing the news officially, he'd somehow let this affect his relationship with me. So when I was 28 years old, during this walk with my dad, as he pours out the story to me, he frames it by telling me that his two most proud moments in his life are 1. How I turned out and his raising me, and 2. That he had completely forgotten about the news my mum told him earlier in that day when I was 10, about him not being my bio-dad, and that it was only upon tucking me in at night, when I was 10, that it briefly crossed his mind. It was at that point that he knew nothing would ever come between us and our father-son relationship would be as awesome as ever. He also confided that my mum did hard substances while pregnant with me, and this broke his heart to witness firsthand. They were very poor. My dad grew up in a foster home without parents. My mum grew up with 6 siblings and ill-equipped parents. She dropped out of 9th grade, whereas all of her other siblings dropped out earlier. Many of them are barely literate. I'm now mid-30s and tragically, my dad ended things in mid-March 2020, right as COVID was hitting. I was out of the country at the time, but immediately flew 30 hours, 30-minute layover, and made it in time for his funeral. I do everything in his honor. My grandmother recently died. She was famous in our town for her amazing cooking and catering, in particular her turkey dinners. Notably, her gravy was absolutely amazing, so delicious. She had a heart attack several years ago and her near-death experience convinced her to share some of her secret recipes with me, all except for her gravy recipe. When she died this spring, I was going through her pantry and found an entire bucket of KFC gravy mix. She was literally using KFC gravy mix as a base to make her incredible gravy. Huge scandal. Faking gravy has got to be the most charming family secret out of all the horrible crap in this story group. My great-great-grandfather was exiled and banned from Missouri for being a sheep thief. We went to my grandmother's for Christmas dinner like we did every year, and my uncle drank too much and kind of hinted that he had an affair with my mother. A couple of months and 2 DNA tests later, we found out my sister is actually his daughter. My dad never spoke to his brother again, and of course my parents got divorced, and I needed a lot of therapy and chocolate. God, we're trash. Great-grandparents' 60th anniversary party at a hotel ballroom, with my cousins and second cousins who hadn't seen each other in years. My mum and I were talking to my grandfather. My mum said, "Wow, I haven't seen Chuck, Fred, and Claire in years." Me? "No kidding. When do you think we'll get a group this big back together again?" Mum said, "Gramps' birthday is in 6 months. We'll see some people then." 6 months? Isn't it his 60th? There was a long silence, and then Gramps said, I never thought about that. My grandfather was 60 when he realized his parents had a shotgun wedding. I was 35 when my mother finally admitted to me that she had been lying about who my birth father was. She waited until after I'd reached out to his other children, and we all thought we were siblings. He later confirmed I wasn't his. She refused to tell me who my biological father really was. When my sister was diagnosed with cancer and her survival chances were low, it inevitably came out that she wasn't my sister. My parents must have felt we should all know the truth just in case. She survived treatment and will always be my sister. I found out my uncle is actually my brother, but my mum had him when she was so young that my grandparents raised him. Due to 23andMe, my dad learned that his recently deceased father wasn't actually his bio-dad. It wasn't a situation related to grandma cheating either, it was a donation, so they knew this was the case his entire life. Pretty crazy that they never told him. His parents didn't pass until he was 65 years old. Talk about a curveball. Well, we all knew that there would be a bunch of infidelity and surprise relatives in this particular story grouping, so excuse me for choosing one of the few that wasn't depressing. My mum and older brother are not biologically related to me. My bio-mum died sometime after I was born, leaving me, my sister, and my dad behind. My brother was the one that told me. My parents never told me because they wanted to protect me from the truth, but my brother thought that was a bullcrap reason for me not to know. I don't know if my parents know that I know the truth, but I don't want to bring it up either. My mum had immigrated here along with my older brother when he was a kid. My dad also immigrated here, and my sister and I were born after he came. I don't know much about our family history beyond that. My brother revealed this info when I was about 18. He isn't the type to lie about something like this. He also said my sister is apparently aware of the truth because she has a memory of my bio-mum being in physical contact with her. I don't think too differently about my family because of this. My mum is still my mum. My grandma didn't drive. I thought she couldn't, but it was just never discussed. One day when I was maybe 7 or 8, I'd been trying to get anyone, to drive me to the store for candy. We were visiting my aunt and uncle. Grandma lived with them. They had bitter honey at the local store, which I could no longer get at home. But no one would take me to the store. Finally, I said I'd just ask Grandma, and my cousin chimes in with, "Grandma can't drive." "Oh, you bet your sweet butt I can drive, they just don't let me." Grandma had overheard and she was in high dudgeon. But that's all that was said about it, and my aunt finally took me to the store, so I forgot about it. Years later, when I'd just gotten my license, I asked my mum what was up with Grandma not driving. She explained that during Prohibition times, Grandma bootlegged alcohol for moonshiners. She was very successful at it. She was so successful at it that when the moonshiners were finally busted, even though the revenuers never caught my grandma, her license was suspended by the state to never be reissued. Later in life, she was told she could petition for it back, but it came with an admission of guilt or some such. She told them to go to hell. The scars on an elder family's wrists were not from a botched attempt at their own life. They were from her mum trying to protect herself and her kids from the approaching Red Army. That was at the end of World War II in Germany. This made it so much worse. My dad fathered a child in high school. His side of the family knew, and my mum. We found out years after he had died that we have a half-sister. Here's how we found out. Dad got a girl pregnant and she decided to go it alone. She moved across the state and had my half-sister. She met a guy, married, and he raised her like she was his own. They had no other children. She didn't reveal my dad's identity until after he died. Apparently she contacted my grandma and mum, but they kept it from us. Years later, half-sister has a kid with medical issues and needs to know the family medical history. She contacts mum and grandma, who again don't tell us. Meanwhile, after Dad died, my uncle had prints made of a favorite picture of Dad. He gets them framed and gives them to all us kids as well as my grandma, aunts, and uncles. Mum gets a picture to our half-sister after their secret meeting. Fast forward another few years, my brother and his roommate live in a large nearby city and hit a bar and pick up and bring home some ladies to sleep over. The next morning, my half-sister sees a photo of my dad on the mantle, turns white, and asks, "Whose picture is that?" "That's my roommate's dad. He died a long time ago." "I need to talk to your roommate." She lived her entire life across state, hundreds of miles. Her friend was going to school in a large city near our hometown. She was visiting and they decided to go to a bar. They got picked up by my brother and his roommate. That's how we found out. My brother went to my grandma and asked. After my grandfather passed, we found out that he'd fathered a child when he was posted in Italy during World War II. He never knew. His mother intercepted any letters from the Italian girl. He came home, met and married my grandmother, and had 4 children. I forget who in the family found out and how. It's crazy to think that we have a whole Italian family out there. My oldest aunt is 77, so this kid would be at least 79 by now, I would think. We've considered doing the DNA testing, but some family members aren't comfortable with how those companies could use the information. It's a really sad story, but if his mother hadn't intercepted the letters, I wouldn't exist. It's a weird place to be in emotionally. My sister cheated on her husband throughout her entire marriage to the point that all 3 of her kids have different biological fathers. That my grandfather was an atomic soldier. Instead of sending him to fight in the Korean War, they sent him to Nevada, where, after having him turn away from the initial flash, he witnessed the mushroom cloud. After that was over, he was ordered to march to the detonation point, where he was unwittingly exposed to high amounts of radiation. Luckily for my family, my grandpa is now in his 90s, even after a few cancer scares, and the rest of us, my mum, aunt, cousins, sister, and I, are cancer-free and fairly healthy. But this is medical information that we really should have known earlier. What budget purchase ended up being your best buy ever? I was traveling in Japan and needed nail clippers. All I could find is this cheap pink Hello Kitty grooming kit. These clippers are the best I've ever owned. They have stayed sharp and functional for 20 years. I'm very protective of them. Everyone in the house knows you don't touch Dad's pink Hello Kitty nail clippers. And if you do, you perish. A guy said there were a bunch of bricks in his backyard he wanted to get rid of. $5 for all of them if you'd come and pick them up because they were larger than regular bricks and very heavy. I grabbed a friend and headed out because I needed some cheap bricks for the edging of my garden. Guy's house was across the river and in some really run-down looking neighborhood. Really glad I grabbed my friend at this point. We pull up and the guy is waiting outside. He looks like he's 80, but I know he must have been a 35-year-old guy who just smoked 10 packs a day. So the guy takes us to his backyard and shows us the pile of bricks, which turns out to be 50-plus antique Louisville fire bricks. So I look at the guy and tell him, I'll take half of them, and as payment I'll give you $20 and some advice. And of course, the guy is looking at me like I'm an idiot, but he accepts my money and helps me and my friend load up about 30 bricks. After I close my truck and get in the car to drive off, I tell him to Google the antique fire bricks and adjust his Craigslist listing. I went back to look at the listing a few days later, and he had changed the price from $5 for the whole pile to $5 per brick, which was the going rate at the time. Nowadays, they go for $20 per brick. Best buy ever. A seed packet from the dollar store. While in college, my boyfriend and I were broke. Really broke. But I still wanted to do something to celebrate spring. We were getting a few cheap things at the dollar store when I noticed they were selling these seed packets from a big old bin that you had to dig through. 4 for $1. No tax. I immediately begged to buy one despite our strict budget. Boyfriend was incredulous I'd want to buy sketchy seeds, but dutifully handed me a quarter. I ended up picking out tomatoes. Well, we got home and I carefully placed about 3 seeds in washed out cans. I watered them and watched them sprout. I loved tending to my little garden. I ended up with 3 beautiful, huge tomato plants. It was a bumper crop, more than we could eat. I sold the extra produce to my classmates. I made about $25. Good seeds. For the umpteenth time, the narrator is resisting the urge to buy a plot of land, some seeds, and live out his Stardew Valley dreams. Not yet, not yet. My dad bought me a flannel jacket for $2 from the equivalent of a dollar store in 1994. Wore it for everything you can think of. I wore it yesterday. Still going strong after 25 years. It's amazing that the jacket held up, yes, but special kudos to you for still being able to fit in it for 25 years. I was traveling from a different city straight into work, where my uniform was a white shirt with a conspicuously black bra. Wasn't stopping home, so I did stop on the first corner store I found and bought a $5 white bra that looked roughly my size, as they had nowhere to try them on, just to wear for one night at work. 10 out of 10, comfiest bra I ever owned. Wore it every day of my life for about a year. It gave in at some point, but it was still a $5 bra. But gosh darn, I dream of the day when all of my bras fit that well. I too have a bra of mystery. First strike, I brought it from a grocery store. Second strike, it was marked down to $2 and plastered with stickers reading, "Final sale, no returns. We're not liable if this kills you. I'm sure there are people who love you," and the like. Third strike, upon ringing it through, the cashier did a double take at the screen, looked at me with great concern, and asked if I was sure I wanted to buy it. After failing to self-combust and send me straight to hell, it wound up being one of the nicest bras I ever had. Wore it for 2 years before the inevitable underwire chest shanking. I still wonder what they thought was wrong with it. I was giving these college-aged women a lift ride. One asks how that Craigslist thing went, so my ears perked up. The other says something like, he complained it went back too far, just don't put it back so far, duh. Eventually I deduce that they're talking about a recliner, which I've been looking for one for some time now. I interject and ask about it. The lady has a Lazy Boy electric recliner she just wants $20 for. I'm like, listen, I know it's sketchy, but if you've got Craigslist randos in your house, Lyft at least gave me a background check. We pull up, I end the ride and follow these ladies into their house. I knew I wanted it as soon as I laid eyes on it, so this college chick is helping me stuff a recliner into my back seat, and all I can think this is how Buffalo Bill kidnapped that girl in Silence of the Lambs. $20 for a recliner so lazy it reclines for me. The seller listed several 2-month-old kittens on Craigslist, first come, first serve. We pull up to an area of town known for its high crime and substance addicts at like 11 at night. Seller plops this impossibly tiny kitten into my hand wordlessly. She was only 3 weeks old, and the seller gave us some crap about how her sister's cat just had kittens, and she didn't want to make a whole new post about it. Kittens were listed for $10. The seller was asking for $15. All we had was a $20. I looked at my now fiancé, and we knew no one else was going to take care of this cat. We drove that kitten home in a laundry basket. Nearly 3 years later, that kitten is attached to my hip, and I can't think of a better $20 investment. I too bought my kitty for $20 on Craigslist from a legit crystal addict. I'd never had a cat before, and this little meow factory has been my best friend ever since. A no-label old beat-to-crap vinyl acetate record with handwritten "That'll be the day" on it, paid $1. Ended up being a live Buddy Holly recording. I sold it for $970. I bought a blanket in Mexico in 1986 for $5. I still have it and it's super soft and comfy. It's been abused, washed, and other things, and it's still in great shape. $12 rain boots at Value Village. I've thrashed these things living in rural Alaska, and they're still totally watertight 2 years later. Stain removers from the dollar store are surprisingly effective. I bought a tub of toothpaste called Right Clean, and then when I looked closely, the cap said Colgate, so I'm guessing companies sell their excess supply to dollar stores and just relabel the contents. I work as a day laborer at a plant that made mayonnaise. We probably made 30 different brands of mayo, from store brands to national brands. They would stop the filling machine, we would change the bottles, caps, and labels, then keep right on running, putting the same stuff out of the same vats into all the different bottles. I heard the same thing from a person who worked in a green bean factory. They'd just slap a different label and keep it rolling. I bought a small turtle from a gas station in Florida when I was in the 1st grade. Max proudly lived until the end of my senior year. I am loving all the cute pet stories coming out of this story grouping. Honestly, I just assumed it would be all Walmart and eBay finds. At the end of a long road trip with some mates, I brought a $20 pair of sunglasses in a gas station just outside Chicago. They fit me better than any pair of sunglasses ever did or ever will, and they made me look awesome. For years, I constantly received compliments about them and was asked where I got them. I lost them after 5 long years and have hated myself for it ever since. They were so no-name they didn't even have a brand name on them at all, so I have no idea who made them. I have no way of finding that gas station either. I've literally spent hundreds of bucks trying to find sunglasses that came close to that perfect fit and style, but I can't. I randomly found a wedding videographer online and booked him for a very affordable rate for my wedding, assuming it wouldn't be very good quality. 2 weeks after the wedding, he emails me a high-quality, well-edited video. He had a drone I hadn't noticed because he was outside of the venue getting B-roll with it before I even started getting ready for my big day. I was floored, and now I recommend him to everyone who ever plans to get married, ever. To update, he's definitely upped his prices since then, and rightfully so, because he does great work. He did the videography from my wedding last summer. I drive cars so old they all still have tape decks. I bought this fake cassette tape with a headphone-style plug that comes off it. You put the tape in the player just like it was a cassette and plug the jack into your phone, and it uses the car's speaker system as an external speaker for the phone. I was so skeptical of it working because it was all of $5 and I've been using it at least 10 years and it works perfectly and beautifully. Plus bonus side-eye every time I pull it out to use it with someone new in the car. I bought a $17 toaster about 20 years ago and it's still going strong. I went to buy a used lawnmower and ended up buying their very old dog for $10. He had never been allowed indoors, never rode in a car, went to a park or had a bath. We had a good 5 years of firsts. Best $10 I ever spent. I bought a button-down shirt from the thrift store in the mid-90s and I still wear it today. The shirt is obviously even older. It doesn't have much wear on it either. I think it's made of rayon or something else. The brand is Kmart. They don't make them like they used to. A little $40 speaker set for my bedroom TV I got in 2006 and still works great in 2019. I bought a fake wood, plastic mantel clock from Value City for about $10 because I needed something for my first apartment. I received a surprising number of compliments on it and was asked more than once if it was a family heirloom because it looked so old. It also lasted for about 10 years until some movers broke it. I was kind of proud of displaying that stupid cheap clock. I was in a market in Shanghai, one of those ones that attracts foreigners with knockoffs of nice brands, where you're supposed to haggle a bit with the store owner. Walked into an electronics store looking for a portable speaker. Negotiated the store owner down over the JBL speaker that basically was the size of a thermos. I think she originally wanted 200 yuan for it and I got it for 125. The exchange rate was about 6.5 yuan for $1, so it was about $21. The owner went out back and got a blank white box and an envelope. Inside the box was a blank speaker without decals. Decals were in the envelope. She then proceeded to put the decals on the speaker in front of me, using tweezers for precision. This was my very first time in China, so it really caught me off guard. The speaker is actually amazing. Very loud, 6 to 8 hours battery life, and perfect for storing in a cup holder. I mostly use it on a golf course, which is perfect. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. We bought an Ellis Island boat tour in New York from one of the guys on the streets. We were led into a van and treated extremely well, so we weren't immediately sketched out too badly. We don't know New York, so we ended up driving 20 minutes through Manhattan by 3 men to an apparently abandoned sketchy dock with no one else there. That's when we were convinced we were being scammed or sold into human trafficking. Gave us a post-it note with a number and they said to go around the abandoned factory to the pier and they were waiting for us. So we took our naive tourist butts around the building, alone, expecting nothing and they would just pull off and scam us. Sure enough, we turned the corner and there was a big boat with a bunch of people and it was legit. We had an amazing tour and a lot of fun with free food and drinks. So overall, a great decision, but in hindsight, we should have been murdered or at least scammed. I risked a huge box of magic cards. I spent around $200. It easily came out to about $2,000 or $3,000 worth. This box was just a random pickup on the internet from Craigslist. My best purchase of magic cards was a store under new management. I went in with my 2 elementary school-aged sons, as a mother that taught them to play, and I asked to purchase the 2 large boxes in bulk. But because they had not had time to catalog their cards, they agreed on 10 cents apiece. At least 2 of the cards combined were valued at $80, and I bought hundreds. It's been some years since I've played, at least 3 or 4 years since I've purchased any. I wonder how much they're valued at, but I don't have the heart to part from them. I started playing in '97, and I have cards prior to that. Fugly or sad and misshapen potted plants from the grocery store. They just need some love, and it's so fun to see them grow. This person is a dark mirror of the narrator who consistently buys nice plants and proceeds to kill them all over a period of weeks. Teach me your secrets, internet person. A $27 dashcam. I got it off Amazon. Its shaper image included an SD card and was $27. I thought it was going to be a waste. It wasn't. I have it on whenever I drive. Turns on automatically. Records automatically. You can turn auto rewrite on or off. Has a high-quality camera, infrared LEDs for nighttime driving, and the mounting mechanism works great. It's stable and has never fallen. It's not 4K recording, but it's 1080, high 120 FPS, and was $27. When some others can run up into the high hundreds, 10 out of 10 would buy again. 10 out of 10 would gift to someone. It actually works great and was $27. My dog was a stray, adopted by a couple but returned because he was too high energy. So his adoption fees were 50%, the best $45 I've ever spent. I went to Mexico a few years back with my family, and it was our first time there. We only left the hotel once because it was so gosh darn hot. On that day, after visiting an ancient temple, we decided to go to a cenote to swim and cool off. We arrived at the bus station and this kind of sketchy taxi driver approached us and asked where we wanted to go. My father mentioned a very popular cenote, but the taxi driver recommended a quieter place and said he'd do it for half price, even though it was already dirt cheap. For some reason, my father agreed, which I thought was mad, so me and my family got in his taxi and drove off. We were riding down the freeway when he starts indicating left. I see no road where he's indicating. We turn off onto a dirt track and into the jungle. For about 10 minutes, we were getting deeper and deeper into the jungle until we reach a house. My father is told to get out and pay at the small shack, and the rest of us aren't allowed out of the car. 5 minutes pass, and by this time, we're freaking out in the car. I didn't really feel like getting kidnapped or anything, but my father returns and we continue into the jungle. Soon we reach a clearing with a few people smoking around a table, and a couple with swimsuits on. Now, I'm a bit more relaxed because there are other customers there. After getting changed, we have a short walk to this beautiful, crystal-clear cenote with overhangs and plants hanging down. It was amazing. We got out and thought money well spent, but then we were led on a tour around 4 other cenotes where we swam under bats hanging in caves and learnt about the history of the cenotes. To top it off, I got to jump off a 10-foot drop into a pool where I could see the bottom about 20 feet below the surface. Best experience we had in Mexico, and I'd love to go back, but I don't think I've ever been so frightened as I was going down that deserted dirt road. Went to a garage sale. There was a little girl in charge. She's like 12. I don't know crap about turntables, but she has a set on a table. I ask how much, and she tells me $20. I ask her if they work, and she tells me she has no idea. Her dad got new ones and wanted to get rid of these. I wait for Dad, and she tells me he's sleeping. She says, "Dude, just take them." I'm like, no, $20 can't be right, maybe $200? She looks at me like I'm stupid. Fine, I'll take them for $20. I drive straight to the pawn shop and see what I can get for them, or if they even work. They frickin' work. The guy looks up prices and comes back with a $1,200 offer. The best $20 I've ever spent. I bought this shirt from a market for $5. It fits so darn well I've started using it as my main shirt. Knockoff North Face hiking shoes in Vietnam. They cost me $20. Kicked the crap out of them and they're still going strong. Bought some Britney Spears tickets in a back alley near the Phillips Arena, downtown Atlanta, from this sketchy guy. Our dumb butts were all excited because it was a great deal for the seating. Keep in mind, this is when tickets were printed from home, and they're huge to scan. The pair that we brought were the OG Ticketmaster tickets, you know, the tiny pair that you had to wait at FYE in the mall for. I got in line and go through the main door and they don't scan. Frick. We knew we were scammed immediately. Then they physically examine our tickets and say, "I don't know why these aren't scanning, but your seats are that way." Walk all the way down to our numbered section and there's one guy sitting in a chair by this massive wall with a single door to walk through. Homeboy physically examined our ghetto tickets. He's like, never seen these before. But he said, "This way, please," and I'll be damned. We're seated in the section where the local businesses buy the sweets and crap for their employees. Food and alcohol was free. We had phenomenal seats and got a free shirt and program. I still can't believe it happened. Not my purchase, but still one of the best. My brother gifted me a Snuggie one year for Christmas. I had painstakingly tracked down a bootleg album he wanted, and he got me a buy one, get one free Snuggie. I didn't speak to him for weeks. I've routinely used that damn Snuggie for every camping trip I've been on for the last 7 years, and I'll tell you it's become the most useful gift I've ever gotten. I bought official PlayStation wireless headphones for €20 a few years ago. They usually cost about €70 brand new. I thought it was a sketchy sale, but nope, they're fine and I still use them to this day. I got an adjustable phone mount at the dollar store when I had an iPhone 4. Still use the same one with my iPhone X. Well, that has to be the only case in recorded history of an iPhone accessory not being made redundant after 1 or 2 generations. $17 Target brand boat shoes. I bought them about 6 years ago and I just wore them randomly for things like going to the grocery store or running down to my car. Then I found they were great practice shoes for disc golf. They lasted 1.5 years of planting and twisting on concrete before they finally folded. Went back and they've been discontinued for years. Rest in peace. Target continually changes their clothing section, so if you like something, buy multiples of it, because it'll be gone or rebranded in like 6 months. Costco fluffy flannels. It feels like a chinchilla is hugging you, and I've had mine for 3 years with no signs of wearing down, despite almost daily use in the northeast winters. My wife got this fluffy fleece blanket from Costco, short on one side, long on the other, and oh my fricking god, I let nobody touch it but me. Flight cargo escort for discounted tickets. I flew to Shanghai from New York for about $200 total, on JAL business class. In return, I had to sign to take responsibility for cargo on the flight. I saw the cargo on the loading dock. It was a pallet covered in camouflage tarp. I received my tickets in person upon arrival at JFK. I'm pretty sure I helped traffic substances or weapons across borders. I can't remember the name of the company. Also, I don't think it exists anymore because it was sketchy as F. So, how much did you pay the smuggler? Nothing. He actually paid me $200. This bamboo back scratcher my wife got me for $3 like 15 years ago. It's right here next to me. I use it to scratch my back, gesticulate when I pontificate, fend off my cats, annoy my cats, and use as a tuning fork to make strange noises to annoy my wife. I joke that in the event of a house fire, this back scratcher is the only thing besides my wife and cats that I'd take with me. That's not a joke though, I really would go for it first. One of those square, window-sized box fans. Technically wasn't a purchase. I found it outside the dumpster of my junior year college apartment back in 2008. I'm a fan of airflow and white noise, so that fan ran 24 hours a day for nearly 11 years, outside of when I was away on vacations and for brief periods in winter. Most of that on the lowest setting, but I mean there were long stretches of literally months where it wasn't turned off. It died in 2019 when I can only assume some critical component just burnt out. I'll miss you, completely free thing that provided me a decade of light breeze and air circulation. Life skills teachers. What's the craziest misconception that you've had to clear up? I remember being in grade 5 or 6, having the first life skills class of our young and budding 10-year-old lives, having the wonders of life explained to us. We got to the point of explaining how babies were made, and one of my classmates got hung up on a point. He raised his hand and asked the teacher, "Is splooge hot?" We all blankly stared at the teacher, waiting for an answer. She replied with an awkward, broken answer, "Well, it's not boiling or anything like that," but before she could continue, the classmate restated the question. "But is it like hot, like temperature hot?" The teacher, still confused, tried her best. "Well, no, it's not like tea or coffee. Haven't you felt it before?" Now, with us being 10, I don't know what she was thinking, but some of us laughed, some were grossed out, but that classmate was almost angry. "No, I haven't. But is it hot?" She ended up explaining to us that it would only be as hot as your body is. It turns out the kid was just worried about hurting future partners with his boiling hot splooge. Boiling hot splooge, dibs on the band name. Taught human growth and development, aka life skills, to 5th and 6th grade boys. In our schools, you had to have a co-teacher with you, which happened to be my best friend as well. Mistake. The boys are encouraged to write out questions on note cards and turn them in, which makes them try to prank us and see if we'll read them out loud. Best one ever was, "What would happen if a man did the deed with a sheep?" To which my buddy replied, "Well, that would be bad." You always keep the good note cards. When I was little, the teacher passed out those note cards in life skills class so that we could anonymously ask questions and get the answers. I asked what a BJ was because I legitimately wanted to know. The teacher, I guess he was too embarrassed to answer, thought someone was trying to prank him and just laughed it off. I, to this day, still wonder what it is. But seriously, sometimes they sound like joke questions, but they aren't. Make a joke, sure, break the tension, but answer the question. I remember feeling so silly, like crap, everyone's laughing. I guess I'm really dumb for not knowing this already. The narrator considered reading out the Urban Dictionary description of said deed for the purposes of educating in this video. But let's be honest, if anything gets this video more likely to hit demonetization, it would be that. I'm gonna throw this one out there. They need to teach girls that urine doesn't come from the same hole that they do the deed in. I've dated 3 girls who were 20 plus at the time who never knew this. They actually went into the bathroom to see if I was lying to them. I'm curious how they thought the whole tampon thing worked. When I was in 4th grade, I thought men could only have 2 kids because they only had 2 testes. It made sense because every man I knew had 2 kids, except my buddy Greg had 2 siblings. Once I reached my revelation, I reasoned that Greg's mum must have cheated on his dad in order to have a 3rd kid. I would have just assumed Greg's dad had 3 testes. Taught in an inner-city classroom in Boston, these kids asked the best questions. Doesn't doing it in the butt cause cancer? I'd ask what HIV can lead to. Does it lead to blue waffle? I don't want to get that. Will Plan B work faster if you snort it? Good times. When my kids were in grammar school, a teacher came around and talked to them about their private places. For the next week or so, my daughters kept saying that they got hit in their privates. They were in 1st and 2nd grade, I think, so roughhousing was common, and I figured since it was a new phrase, they were using it as much as possible. Then one day, the youngest came in and said her sister wouldn't quit touching her in her privates. I was starting to freak out. I asked her to show me where her sister was touching. She pointed to her arm. I was flabbergasted and said, "How is that your privates?" She then informed me that the teacher who talked to them about bad touching said that a place that makes you feel uncomfortable was your privates, and that her sister was touching her arm and making her uncomfortable. After that, I got out my anatomy and physiology book from school and we had a much longer discussion about such things. My life skills teacher in high school told us stories about a female student she had a long time ago. The student got pregnant and was freaking out to our teacher not knowing what happened because she had apparently been taking birth control. My teacher was asking her the typical questions about her situation, how long she'd been taking them, among other things. Then later the girl mentions she had been taking her birth control pills up her hoo-ha. She figured that since the baby comes from there, that's where you take the pill. As a pharmacist, this is exactly why we put "take 1 tablet by mouth daily" or "take 1 teaspoonful by mouth" on the label. I had a mother pour an oral antibiotic suspension in her kid's ear for an earache once. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in a certain small sub-Saharan African country where life skills class was practically non-existent. Talking about that part of my life openly was a bit taboo, and misconceptions were everywhere. As the sole outsider in my village, I was assumed to be the local expert on everything, from computers to physics to world politics to calculus to, yes, doing the deed. There were so many myths, but one sticks in my mind because it was so bizarre, so prevalent, and I've never heard it anywhere else. Splooge is the only source of vitamin K, so girls must begin doing the deed at an early age to get proper nutrition. This was startling for a whole tangled mess of reasons. The cultural initiation rites that perpetuated the myth and coerced younger people to do the deed with men twice their age. The inverse relationship between prevalence of transmitted diseases and the degree of knowledge about preventing it, the enormous cultural pressure to marry young and have lots of babies, and the lack of knowledge about nutrition in general. Parents commonly ate balanced meals while their kids were only given a type of corn mash, believing that this was the only thing necessary to help them go strong. Basically, my students were already stunted from malnutrition, facing a lot of pressure to have to do the deed, and laboring under mountains of misinformation about the deed. But then there was this additional myth telling them that they needed to start having the deed without protection as soon as possible so their bodies would develop normally. I held talks at my school to combat this, taught them how to put protection on correctly, and gave some additional talks about nutrition for good measure. Oh man, the discussions we had. I'm no life skills teacher, but I went to a very sheltered private school that did not teach basic life skills. It only went as far as covering puberty, so parents had to fill in the rest. And then my mum effed it up pretty badly. She started by describing the male anatomy, wang first, then ballsack. But she never said the word for that organ again, only it. It gets so hard it can go inside a woman. And the whole time, having never seen what an adult member looks like, I assume she means the ball bag goes into the hoo-ha as well. And since I'd only seen a baby eggplant from daycare where the ball bag was actually bigger than the eggplant, it made sense. I thought this for several years until a friend cleared that misconception up. I was also unaware of thrusting. I thought you just put it in and waited a bit. I'm not a health ed teacher, but back in 8th grade I saw a girl crying in the ladies' room. I walked over and asked her what was wrong, and she told me she was bleeding down there and she legitimately thought she had internal damage and was dying. I had a friend that this happened to. She hid the bloody undies for months and was convinced that she had dropped dead at any time. Fortunately, I was in Girl Scouts and they were pretty good about letting all of us know what to expect. I'm a development support worker at a treatment home for dual-diagnosed teenage boys. As my co-workers and I basically raise these kids, we regularly field life skills questions. When I was pregnant, these were my two favorites. So when the baby's big enough, you'll just poop it out, right? Is it a puppy? English teacher here. Okay, not life skills, but you'd be surprised about the blurted statements during the Romeo and Juliet unit. So I had one girl who honestly believed she couldn't get pregnant if she didn't climax. Had one boy who thought that humans basically stopped growing hair down there in the 1980s. The poor guy actually thought he was going to be ridiculed in gym class. Freshmen are sometimes horrifyingly underinformed. Believed that you could get acquired immunodeficiency syndrome by being gay, not having unprotected intercourse, but just by being homosexual. My life skills teacher only misinformed my health class further. Told us you have a 90% chance of getting an STD if you have premarital woohoo, women can't have climaxes, so it's not worth doing the deed if you're a girl. Adult magazines and websites cause men to be abusive. Ugh. She started the class by asking, "Raise your hand if you think people who have done the deed before marriage are going to hell." I went to a public school in Alabama, obviously. And literally nobody was surprised. Still, this story was posted 10 years ago. I wonder if there has been any more progress in that particular area, or if we're still more or less at square -1 in that state. The misconceptions that I, as a 25-year-old female life skills teacher, would not A. consider going to prom with you, or B. share my personal bedroom history with you. I've also had to disprove the following notions. That men can't get transmissible diseases. That blue waffle is a real common transmissible disease. That you can't get pregnant if you wash yourself down there after doing the deed. That you can't get pregnant if you drink a lot of Mountain Dew. That if you take all of the birth controls, pills, Depot, Implanon, etc., at once, not that any doctor would give them all to you, you're uber protected from pregnancy. Oh, and a really common one, that 2 rubbers are better than 1. And on and on and on. Mostly I spend a lot of time answering really basic but highly personal and potentially embarrassing questions from my anonymous question box. My friend goes around high schools to give talks and answer questions about doing the deed as a teacher to 16-year-old girls. A girl began to cry once and told the teacher, and the whole class, that she was a hermaphrodite. After calming her down and explaining it all, she agreed to answer more questions for those curious. Turns out she was just talking about her fun button and thought it was a tiny male member. Needless to say, my friend handled it so well, but the girl probably had to change schools afterwards. I know of a girl who didn't know where babies came from. This was a friend of mine's cousin who was pregnant, but her mum had always had C-sections with her kids. So when she was told about the natural method of birthing a child, she freaked out. Well, it comes out the same way it went in. You've got to be joking. How can a woman get to a stage in her life where she's pregnant and not know? Before C-sections, we just kind of popped out. They even made a dramatic documentary called Alien. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Well, kinda related. When I was little, I thought that maxi pads were meant so that a woman could pee themselves whenever they wanted. My dad and I were watching a commercial and I went on a tangent about how gross that was. He looked at me funny and said it was time we had a little talk. I was in a public bathroom in a large restaurant with my mother when I was approximately 10. As I was washing my hands, I noticed that there was a large metal dispenser on the wall for tampons $1 and napkins $1. As my mum was exiting her stall to come wash her hands too, I exclaimed, "Why would anyone pay $1 for a napkin when there's free napkins at their table?" I heard a lady in her stall snicker and my mum was a bit embarrassed. I knew what tampons and pads were, but I didn't know that napkin was a polite term for a pad. Maybe not exactly a misconception, but a girl asked me, "Is it true that when the man arrives, he pees in you as well?" It took all of my effort to not say something like, "Only if you ask him to." Probably wouldn't have gone over very well. I teach life skills to individuals with intellectual disabilities, so I get to clear up loads of crazy misconceptions. During my most recent one, I had to explain to a guy of relatively normal intelligence that girls do not have male anatomy down there. I watched his entire mind just explode to that new information. I'm pretty sure I changed his life. I know a girl in her 20s that honestly believed that males have an extra bone in their wang. She tried to defend herself by claiming that if it didn't, then why would it be called that when the guy was excited? I mean, dogs literally have a bone in their member. Many animals do. Also many primates, but for some reason it got lost during human evolution. By far the biggest and worst misunderstanding in life skills is the thought that not teaching kids about doing the deed makes it less likely that they'll get pregnant. During the talk at our school, one guy asked if one testy produced girl babies and the other produced boy babies. Looking back, it wasn't such a dumb question from the mind of a 10-year-old, but oh, how we laughed. Nice little factoid, the Greeks believed this, and some tried to strangle the one that produced girls. I'm a registered nurse. I was conducting a pre-op interview on a teenager who was going to have surgery. She was there with her mother, probably in her late 30s or early 40s, and I was asking basic health-related questions. Past medical history, surgical history, allergies, etc. At the end of the interview, the teen, looking kind of embarrassed, asked me, "How many holes do we have down there?" I answered, "Women have 3. Just then, the teen looks at her mum and explains, "See, Mum, I told you." And the mum looks confused and asks, "Are you sure it's 3? I tell her, yes, women have 3. Vajayjay, urethra, butthole. And men have 2. The mother goes, "Men have 2? I was shocked. Long story short, I had to draw them a picture of female and male anatomy to drive the point home. They thought that women urinate from their hoo-has. I can see how the teen could be confused, but the mum was too. In college, I dated a 21-year-old Muslim girl who believed that sperm could rapidly swim up off the bedsheets, over her leg and down her hoo-ha, and through her cervix on their own like hungry, sentient parasites. Can you imagine if that crap was real and you had to swat and slap the splooge monsters to death off their faces and chests before the little B-words reached their targets? Also, you would be guaranteed to get pregnant from every hotel bed you ever laid in. And that statement is just making me think about that gross element of hotels and no thank you. One of the standards that we have to teach in our state, Kentucky, is that men produce sperm for the entirety of their lives, whereas women have a finite number of eggs. Generally, this gets into PMS, menopause, and a few similar subjects. For contextual purposes, I'll try to outline the classroom. This is a 7th grade classroom, 13-year-olds. 50% are below the poverty line, 50% Caucasian, and 20% Hispanic. The rest are various other races. 100% male as I was working with the males and another teacher was working with the females. So this particular child is a plump little boy. Really contemplative too. You can see him looking down to the ground, pondering and really working out something in his head every time he responds. So after I explain how older men can have babies but older women cannot, he just asks, "So you're telling me an old wrinkly man can have a baby?" To which I affirm, yes. So the kid is just staring down, thinking for a while. After about a minute, he looks back up and says, "So if an old wrinkly man has a baby, does that mean the baby has wrinkles?" I honestly just about lost it. Then we had a conversation about how people being shot do not produce bullet-resistant babies. Also, every class for some reason responded with my question of, "What's the one way to not have a baby?" in the same gosh darn way. "You wear 3 rubbers." Like, what the heck? We were taught life skills by our religious teachers, and in this case, our middle-aged, Jesus-loving teacher. It was always going to be an awkward affair in a mixed-gender school, boisterous lads showing off to the girls giggling, etc. The lesson was moving along as planned, but it was getting a tad boring. Questions were being fired, but nothing we didn't already know. Then the teacher had a brainwave, giving everyone a small piece of paper and asking us to write an anonymous question if we wanted to know something but were too afraid to ask. Within seconds, half the class is scribbling away. The papers go into a box and are picked out one by one. "What is this strange buzzing wand my mum has?" Quite a tame one, and the teacher was able to reel off a vicar-friendly answer, but it got progressively uglier. What's a BJ? What's prostate massaging? What's felching? It's worth noting that this was around 1994, so the internet was not an option. The teacher was backed into a corner, armed only with a book and a very basic knowledge of the deed as a reproductive tool. Lots of stuttering ensued. Watching a middle-aged woman explain to the class the finer points of manual stimulation still makes me raise a smile. I'm a teacher, but not normally a life skills teacher. My state is abstinence-only education, and so most of the life skills is limited at best. This may explain a 9th grade class I had 3 years ago with 4 mothers in it. Anyway, one of my students was convinced that if you jumped up and down after you had done the deed, you wouldn't get pregnant. Without using any words that would make me blush, I told her unequivocally that she was wrong and to not try that at home. Then another student raised her hand and essentially asked about the pull-out method. She didn't know the terminology. I told her again that was not a really reliable method, especially with teenage boys. Then a third student asked about doing the deed when you're not ovulating. She actually asked, what about having fun during some parts of the month and not others? I explained that teenage girls may or may not have a real reliable cycle, and being even a day off the rhythm method could result in pregnancy. Finally, after towing the company line, the only foolproof method is abstinence, and in the absence of abstinence, take care of yourself, a girl in my class sighs and says, well, I will just keep doing sit-ups after doing the deed. I kid you not. And some of these girls were AP college preparatory students. The best one I heard was from the nurse at our school who was explaining all of the diseases you can get from the hoo-ha, BJs, and doing it in the butt. A girl in the class raised her hand and said, so that's where crack babies come from, right? And the nurse asked her, what? And the girl said, crack babies, you know, from doing it in the butt. You've got to love abstinence-only education in an overly religious state, teaching girls to hate their bodies and be ignorant at the same time. The most disconcerting thing I'd heard while teaching life skills was the notion that transmissible diseases are like a game of tag. I was asked numerous times that if one had acquired immunodeficiency syndrome and gave it to another person, does that mean they're cured? Tag, you got herpes. Anyone care to take this HIV off me? So I'm not a teacher for this subject, but my little sister was 13 and my brother had just gotten married. I mentioned to my sister that I thought it was weird that my brother is going to the same cabin as my father had for his honeymoon with my stepmom. My little sister said it wasn't weird because doing the deed is only for having babies, and since my brother didn't want kids for 5 years, they wouldn't be doing the deed, and that my dad was too old to have kids, so they also never did the deed. Explaining to her that there are more reasons for doing the deed was awkward. Also, my sister-in-law, until she was 16, thought that doing the deed meant you laid side by side and the sperm crawled out of the guy's belly button and into the girl's belly button. We were all homeschooled and Christian. In case anyone's wondering, my mum never gave us any kind of growing up talk. No birds and bees, no puberty, nothing. She did put a copy of The Care and Keeping of You under my door with a note saying I should read it. It is an American Girl Company book on your changing body. Bras appeared in my drawers, but nothing was ever said. There was a steady supply of sanitary products, but I never even told her I got my period, I just figured it out. So yeah, unless you looked it up yourself, you knew nothing. I used to go to a really religious school. The girls there believed that no one actually enjoys doing the deed, it's just the media telling you you do. My friend once had a Chinese exchange for uni, and she had to look after him. In the first month, it was discovered that he knew nothing about doing the deed or how babies were made. 19 years old, by the way. My friend taught him all of this during his exchange. Anyone who doesn't know, China's culture is that adult fun and relationships come after education and the establishment of your career. The schools don't teach it, and there are stories of kids going out and parents moving them over provinces to stop them dating so they can focus on schoolwork. Don't any of these hyper-religious folks grow up on farms? I ask because, you know, it's hard to be so misinformed about doing the deed when you're breeding animals. My girlfriend is a pharmacist and has told me some good ones. She had a girl complain about her birth control falling out, and found out that she had been sticking the pills up her hoo-ha. Also, she had several that ran out of pills early and needed to be told that only she takes them, not her and her boyfriend. And of course, she's had a few girls get pregnant and find out that you're supposed to take the pills every day, not just when you do the deed. Medical professionals. What's the craziest DIY treatment you've seen a patient attempt? I had a guy come in for coughing and shortness of breath for the past few months. His lungs sounded like absolute crap. Got a chest x-ray that looked horrible, so I did a CT scan. Radiologist called it the worst case of necrotizing pneumonia he'd ever seen. The guy had like a 15% functional lung tissue left. The patient then mentioned things had been worse after he started using a new breath freshener spray. He whipped out one of those blunt effects concentrated air freshener bottles supposed to cover up green herb smell. Labeled not for internal use. Apparently he'd been using it like Banaka spray and had already gone through 3 bottles. Paramedic here once had to explain to a family that putting lemon juice in the eyes of an unconscious patient isn't an approved treatment method. And no, it didn't work. It was an interesting moment when I had to explain why his eyes hurt, though. Smelling salts, same logic applied for seeing acids. Anesthesiologist here, we had a patient come in for I&D of bilateral deltoid abscesses. He apparently had thoughts of being a bodybuilder, but instead of lifting weights or knowing someone who could hook him up with some quality roids, he decided to bulk up using some protein powder at GNC, and mixing it with water, drawing it into a syringe, and injecting the 20 to 40 cc's directly into the muscle. If bulk was what he was going for, it definitely worked, temporarily. A rip-roaring localized infection makes you look pretty swole. They also got almost a liter of pus mixed with liquefied protein powder out of each deltoid. This also wasn't the first time he had been in for this problem. That last line kills me. Try it once, shame on you. Try it more than once, what the frick are you doing with your life? My dad had an abscess on his face. It was huge, about the size of a golf ball and horribly red. It kept getting bigger. My mum, a nurse, kept telling him to go to the doctor, but my dad was a ridiculous cheapskate. One day when she was gone, we noticed a big whitehead had formed on the abscess, and it was apparently ready to pop. My dad went out to the garage, got his shop vac, placed it over the whitehead, and proceeded to suck out the abscess. It worked surprisingly well and healed up after that nicely. Mum was still furious, though. It's a pity these medical stories tend to do quite well on the channel, because these are also the ones that leave the narrator dry heaving over the side of his recording setup. This was the first one of the day to do so, although the next one admittedly took me even further. If I've learned anything from reading the stories here, it's that some people, particularly men, will tolerate almost any amount of pain to avoid a doctor seeing whatever stupid crap they've done to themselves. This is no exception. I once spoke to a paramedic who went out to a man at 2 a.m. who had excruciating pain down below. The poor organ was wrapped tightly in soaking bandages, and underneath was a blackened member with large pus-filled holes in it. The man eventually admitted that he'd shoved a chicken bone, a clean one, whatever that means, down his pee-pee hole for pleasure. Predictably enough, he couldn't get it out, and being too embarrassed to go to the doctor, he had left it until he was in so much pain he couldn't walk, both from the rotted eggplant and the fact that he hadn't been able to urinate for days. Apparently, you couldn't actually see the bone once the wound was clean, and although not an expert, my friend couldn't imagine that what was left was salvageable. In nursing school, while I was on clinical rotation in neurology, there was a man who ended up having his member removed. It turned out he had an infection brewing for quite a while and thought the best course of action was placing a sock over it in the hope that it would heal. He was generally confused and upset as to why this didn't work to heal the issue. One of my first clinic patients was a guy who was injecting a mixture of testosterone, human growth hormone, sesame oil, and sunflower oil into the base of his member as a DIY enlargement therapy. Well, it got infected, so he ended up going to the ED for incision and drainage. I saw him as a post-ED visit, and at the time, he figured that he shouldn't be injecting things into his eggplant while it was healing, so instead he was injecting his oil and sketchy hormones off the internet concoction everywhere else into his body. Arms, legs, butt, shoulders, etc., because he figured it would still have some effect. Judging by the rest of these stories, some men are capable of committing atrocious, heinous acts of terror on their own members. There's a myth that lowering someone's core temperature will save them from an opiate overdose. As a result, many first responders have arrived on scenes to find friends or fellow users inserting ice into someone's butt. Sometimes they don't have ice though, which leads to people getting pretty inventive. Popsicles, frozen hot dogs, my personal favorite, which regrettably I didn't witness myself, it was told to me by another medic, was a bag of frozen French fries. Cold will do nothing to help someone who is overdosing on smack or other opiates. What they need is respiratory support, oxygen or artificial ventilation, and naloxone, Narcan. If you're a user or know one and somebody ODs, call 911, perform mouth-to-mouth, and give Narcan if you have it, but leave the popsicles in the freezer. I work in dental and years ago had a patient attempt to superglue her front teeth back on after they broke in half. She screwed up and ended up gluing the chunk to her upper lip. I had a dental patient with a dead front tooth that had turned black, so she painted it with white nail polish daily. This happened when I was still a med student doing a rotation in the ED. The patient comes in and is pretty vague about his actual complaint, something about head pain, but he looks just fine sitting, waiting to be seen. When I finally get to see him and ask what actually happened, he removes the hat he was wearing and a chunk of skin about the size of my hand literally flaps off his skull. This man managed to basically scalp himself, and apparently it had been like that for 3 days. According to him, it was caused by falling in his bathroom and hitting his head on the toilet. He had been previously duct taping it down or using the hat to hold the skin on, but it wasn't sticking well, and that's when his wife convinced him to come to the hospital. Pharmacist here, worked in a shop where a woman asked for some advice about a potential UTI or STI. Told me she had bathed her hoo-ha in bleach for 5 minutes to try and kill any bacteria. Miraculously, she hadn't done any lasting damage. An old lady told me the rain hurt her arthritis. That's reasonable. She also swore that dog spit had healing properties, so she let her dogs lick her feet when she felt it coming on. She then wanted to show me a video of said dogs licking said feet. I swiftly and politely declined. Adult patient had gas and poked a hole in his belly button with basically a knitting needle to release it. It didn't work. He actually came in for the ensuing infection in his belly button. Oh God. I don't know what age I was before I came to the conclusion that poking holes in my body's organs was a bad idea, but it was at least a decade earlier in my life than this gentleman. The young narrator was a moron, so what does it make this man? I work in oncology pharmacy. I had a patient die of totally treatable chest cancer because they decided to treat it with mistletoe instead of chemo, all because Suzanne Summers did. Yeah, the Thigh Master Lady. Don't take medical advice from the Thigh Master Lady. The most heartbreaking thing I've seen is a desperate husband bring his wife in at death's door. They were young with 2 kids under 10. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer and didn't like what her oncologist was telling her. To be fair, that crap is terrifying. She then left the UK, so all of the chemo and surgery that was free at the point of access, and followed the alternative practices recommended by some witch doctor in her own country. By the time her husband dragged her back, she was too far gone. Had spread to too many organs, trouble with breathing, groggy, seizures from brain mets. I work in ED. I don't know how oncologists and palliative care teams do what they do. Of all the horrible traumas I've dealt with, this is one of the most upsetting cases I've ever picked up. A little late to this thread, but I have a weird one. A patient was told by her doc that she had low magnesium and should consider supplements. Not uncommon. Instead of getting MG supplements, she ate an entire tub of homeopathic volcanic ash and completely destroyed her electrolyte imbalance and ended up in ICU. We admitted her as a pharmaceutical overdose, so poison control automatically follows up with you. It was hard to explain to them. It was probably naturopathic, not homeopathic. I don't know enough about specific differences. Think of a tub of protein powder, but volcanic ash. Her husband brought it in for the poison control report. You were supposed to mix in a scoop with water for the health benefits. She ate the whole tub and had a seizure and wrecked her kidneys. The activated charcoal and volcanic ash vomit that was all over her when she came from emergency was a B word to clean up. A mentally delayed woman came in septic to the ED. We did x-rays, blood cultures, urine cultures, the works. Finally found this weird image on her pelvis film, and we had the gyn come in to do a pelvic exam. They pulled out this blob with bones in it. Y'all, I swear to God, it was a decomposing frog. She put it in her hoo-ha for safekeeping. She got toxic shock syndrome from a frog. Riveted for her pleasure. My boss is a nurse practitioner. I asked her what the worst thing she'd witnessed was. She continued on to tell the story of a man who had stapled his ball bag together onto his body after slipping with the razor. He had had it that way for days, metal holding his poor testes in place, infected and gross as you'd expect, before he came in to a professional. Later admitted his ex had attempted to castrate him. The organs lived, never fear. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A guy came into the ED because his leg was swollen. I'm talking like twice the size of his other leg. It turned out that his 4th and 5th toes were getting caught on his sock, which to be fair sounds kind of annoying. So he cut them the frick off with scissors. And then, surprise, it got infected. And he waited, and that's how he lost his entire fricking leg. Had a young teenager with sickle cell disease who had been in the hospital for around a week, already who decided to manage his pain himself. This was a few years ago, but I caught him pretending to take his meds. He would cock his head back and gesture that the pill went into his mouth, but really he either kept it in his hand or he threw the pill behind his back and landed somewhere in his bed. He was also quite a talker, which I then assumed was a tactic to try and distract me. I kept seeing his odd behavior and caught him doing this 2 to 3 times by the middle of the shift, so I was definitely onto him. He had a PICC line, which is essentially a long IV where the tubing goes all the way to your heart, in his left arm. And I noticed it was quite a bit more swollen compared to his other arm. Sometimes clots can happen in PICC lines, so that was my biggest concern at first. But the line was drawing blood fine, so I knew it wasn't clotted off. I told the doc, then I drew blood from his PICC line and sent it down to the lab to be cultured to see if there was any bacteria. Lo and behold, it came back positive for bacteria that's commonly found in tap water, and usually not a source of infection in the infected PICC lines. Fast forward a few hours later, he confessed that with any oral medication, pill form, he can slip by the nurses, he saved for later in order to crush it up himself to try to dissolve it with sink water in the bathroom. Every room had a private bathroom, so he could inject it in himself via his PICC line. Having once seen a commercial that oatmeal can lower cholesterol, a patient started having chest pains and tried to resolve it with a bowl of oatmeal. We had a guy come in with an abscess on his right thumb. When I asked him what happened to his hand, he told me about his recent deep-sea fishing trip and was given the responsibility of cutting the fish with an open wound in his hand. A sliver of fish got in there and became infected as it healed, so this guy gets the bright idea of doing a little DIY wound drainage by grabbing his pocket knife and cutting it open again, leading to greater infection. Yep, I also had a smack addict cut her thumb on her broken smack pipe. The thumb was incredibly infected. She grew tired of waiting for the hand surgeon to arrive. She was in the operating room with another patient, so she bit her finger to release the pus. Then she left the hospital, cursing the staff the whole time because we're useless, etc. As a child, I got really bad sunburn. The person looking after me coated my sunburn in baby oil to help it heal and sent me back out into the sun. I realized when I was older why my mum went nuts. I have a Jamie Oliver recipe that directs me to do the same thing midway through roasting a chicken. My mater would have literally murdered if someone did that to one of her kids. Crackling, crispy skin in 30 minutes. My mom once melted Vicks Vapor Rub into my tea because she thought that would help my cold. It didn't help my cold. I know people who would do this, more than one of them. They swear by Vicks Vapor Rub and kinda treat it like a cure-all. My neighbor came over to borrow a chainsaw. I noticed he had a thick bandage around his arm and asked him what happened. He said he fell out of a tree last week and cut his arm. I asked if he got stitches and he said he just wrapped it up and his family was praying over it. About 4 days later, I saw his wife, and she said he was really sick and may have the flu. Came to find out he had septicemia and was dying. He died a week later of kidney failure and sepsis. Putting an adult fun toy up the butt to better reach another, larger toy. Patient used to get hard-ons in class and it embarrassed him so much that he used rubber bands to prevent it. Ended up killing the tissue in his eggplant and now he needs a catheter for life. A man who'd accidentally sliced his leg open at his workplace. He obviously figured that as surgeons use staples to close wounds, he'd cut out the trip to the hospital and DIY it with an ordinary desk stapler. Arrived in ED with a pus-filled wound with the odd discolored staple hanging off it some days later. I am not a medical professional, but my father-in-law had severe skin cancer. He basically had an open sore on his back for several years that bled and bled. We never knew about it until one day we saw a pancake-sized crater through his shirt. Went to the hospital finally, and they basically said he had cancer through his entire body at this point. His response was that he thought it was a cut that wouldn't heal and put gauze and neosporin on it. Since folks are curious, yes, he is still alive, but they didn't give him much time left. They managed to treat the wound, but the cancer spread into his organs and bones. The sad part is it could have been avoided if he just went to a doctor years prior. But that is unfortunately the common mindset in a lot of older folks. White bread soaked in milk placed on an armpit abscess to draw out the infection. They needed an IND and a couple of weeks of IV antibiotics by the time they got to us. Either that or the guy who crashed his motorbike, scraped his leg all to heck, and then decided the best course of action was to self-cauterize it on the tailpipe. Wow, stupid or not, the tailpipe guy had a set of brass ones on him. When I worked in the ER, my colleague had to see a guy with an ear problem. He had something stuck in his ear and had been trying to get it out. This wasn't a new thing, he had been trying for some time. Turns out he'd completely removed his tympanic membrane, and the bits that were stuck in his ear and that he was trying to pick out with cotton buds and hair clips were his ossicles. Enjoy! Had a patient come into the ER with a makeshift bandage on his shin. He'd fallen on rocks while hiking and had left a 3-inch long, half-inch deep gash in his leg. I go to pull the bandage off, and as I'm peeling it away, I notice the skin is completely black, and there's dark chunks of fungus falling out of the wound. It looked necrotic, like it had been left alone for a week. I look at this guy like he's crazy as he tells me the wound is only a few hours old. He's pretty proud as he explains that he created a makeshift poultice by chewing up leaves and moss, mixing it with river mud, and stuffing it into his leg. That's what all the black mossy stuff was. Hint: don't do this. My grandpa thought a leg discrepancy was causing my back pain, which was causing spasms. He put several pieces of cardboard in my shoes to try and even out my legs, which were already even. He also thinks black beans cure everything. My dad thought those pesky spasms were a pinched nerve, so he'd take me to the chiropractor, his girlfriend, to get my neck cracked whenever it happened. Seizures, people. They were seizures. My stepfather thought he had a boil of some sort on his arm a few years ago. So he did what any middle-aged dad would do, cut the sucker open and poured hydrogen peroxide on it. Turns out it wasn't a boil but a form of skin cancer. Also turns out that hydrogen peroxide doesn't do much to help with melanoma. After a lot of one-sided discourse, he went to the doctor to get it checked and treated. He's now cancer-free. Good God, how is this man one of the most sensible people in this entire grouping? I'll take this as an absolute win over the many, many men in the earlier stories who no longer have usable reproductive organs. When I was an internal medicine resident, I came across a very nice 50-year-old Dominican lady. She was very well-mannered, but one could tell she was not the sharpest tool in the shed. As I was prepping her chart for our first visit, I noticed she'd been seen by every single digestive disease MD in our hospital system. Not only that, she'd had every single procedure in the book, ranging from endoscopies up both holes and culminating in an exploratory laparotomy. You're opened up to basically look inside you when we have no clue what's going on. All of this because for years she'd had one single complaint. She reported severe gnawing pain in her stomach. At this point I should mention she was Spanish-speaking only. Not only that, she had a very heavy Dominican accent, and I was the first Hispanic doctor to ever see her. My first language is Spanish, and even I had difficulty understanding her. So she comes in, and after exchanging some first-time pleasantries, I politely ask her how she's doing. Sure enough, although she was smiling and said she felt well, she pointed at her belly and said it was biting again, and asked for cream to kill it. At this point, I got intrigued. Her medication list only mentioned a cream used for herpes breakthroughs. The previous fellow only mentioned in his note that in every single visit, she only asked for the cream and nothing else. When I asked her what she meant by the biting and what she intended to do with the cream, she very calmly tells me she intended to stick the cream up her butt in order to kill the bird living inside her. After delving more deeply into her story, it turns out she didn't have a medical condition. Ever since she was a little girl, she believed that after eating a whole quail egg, the bird had spawned inside her and gnawed away in her insides whenever she was hungry. After a short visit to psych, she was diagnosed with a somatic-type delusional disorder. No amount of medication or psychotherapy will cure her, but she was still a fully functional mother of two who paid her taxes and had part-time jobs. I reached out to every digestive disease doctor in our hospital system once more to make sure she never receives an inappropriate invasive intervention. I've been following her for 3 years now, and she's happy as one can be, considering she has a bird living inside of her. What's the stupidest thing you've ever witnessed one of your new hires do? After more weeks of training than should have been necessary, charts, books, and explicit instructions, he ruined a $10,000 piece of equipment because he didn't load it correctly, because it, quote, took too much time. It was an industrial centrifuge. Basically, you have to try really hard to not balance it. You have to load everything on one side to blow the motor. He blew the motor. He wasn't fired then and there. He was fired about 10 minutes later when I sent him to the boardroom to review the materials while I set up the replacement, and I found him in the CEO's office watching adult content online. I walked in on it. Unless centrifuge instruction manuals involve a giant wang defiling a screaming woman, he was not doing as instructed. Also, he wasn't browsing incognito, so when I checked the browser history later, the very clearly named website was there, clear as day. I did have to explain to my boss what it was, and that was a little awkward. I didn't actually have the power to fire him, but I was so livid the words just flowed out of my mouth. Sounds like he was either a moron or he was trying to get fired. Either way, the hiring manager needs to be looked at. I worked at a convenience store and often fell into the role of supervisor or manager. My boss was on holiday when the following happened. We had a fellow working one night when a customer brought in a $5,000 winning lotto ticket. First mistake, and completely against policy, the employee opened the safe and just paid it. Nobody should know you can open the safe, especially when we worked alone at night. That should have been referred to the Lotto Corp to pay directly, or the owner could write a check. Second and worst mistake, there's little bits of paper you have to submit to the lotto folks when you pay a ticket, so your store gets the money paid back, minus a fee. He threw the paper in the garbage, which then ended up in the huge dumpster that served both us and several apartment buildings. So if I don't find this piece of paper, my boss loses the $5,000, and one or more of the employees might lose their jobs. I put bags over my shoes, grabbed a pair of dish gloves and a painter's mask, climbed a ladder and hopped in the dumpster. I started ripping bags and trying to determine what day and where it came from. Just shy of 2 hours later, I emerged with that piece of paper, followed quickly by the longest shower of my life. The idiot responsible for my dumpster dive didn't even say thank you. He wasn't allowed to work alone for some time thereafter, and he got epically chewed out when the boss came back. Honestly, that seems like the kind of thing the narrator would have done in his first few jobs, but I don't know if the guy in question could put it down to the same idiot adolescent reason that I could have back then. I once had to train some new girls who seemed to be friends at a concession stand. In the space of about an hour, they demanded they be allowed to modify their uniforms, asked if they could use our cash registers to check social media sites. Were told that customers order food, you prepare that order, and they decided that's too much work and it'd be easier to make a bunch of random orders and serve them if they happen to get ordered. But, new girls, if no one orders those things, that food goes to waste. If that happens, can we take it home with us? No. They disappeared into a storage room to check their phones and gossip. They hadn't been on duty for 20 minutes at this point. They had a popcorn fight. They just started screaming and throwing popcorn at each other while behind the counter. They were called into the manager's office and were immediately fired. They threw popcorn at the manager and then stormed out screaming about how they'd better get paid for all their work. I'm not sure they even completed 5 minutes of real work. Hey girls, let's go F with a business today. My dad found out his secretary had racked up over $45,000 in legal bills from emailing simple questions to a lawyer she was told not to talk to unless she asked my dad. He was very calm and wrote a nice email to her, and she didn't get the memo. Her response was along the lines of, "Wow, you pay your lawyer that much? I think I deserve a raise." I choose to believe it went like this. The secretary mails the lawyer, "So, what's your favorite color?" Send. Lawyer. Listen, I hope you understand by emailing me I am charging you for my time. Also, my favorite color is green. $2,500. Oops, sorry. Do you have a PlayStation 4? Yes. $2,200. How is it? Holy crap, lady. Do you realize what you're doing? $3,000. I worked as a manager at a frozen foods production plant. I supervised the line crew. Well, one day I decided we'd start an hour early, 4 a.m., so we could finish early. Everyone comes in on time. Then I noticed one of the ladies laughing and drooling all over the pizza crusts. I just kind of ignore her at first, and then she started stumbling around. I began paying more attention to her and noticed that her eyes were completely bloodshot and her face was bright red. When I had seen her at first, I thought it was just the early hours. So I pulled her aside and talked to her, and I can taste the alcohol running off her. I send her to the break room where I can follow company policy and take her to a hospital for a blood test. I finish the things I need to do and head in there to find her. She's gone. 30 minutes later, 2 cops are at the front door. She took off, got in her car, and hit a power line 100 feet from the plant. Needless to say, she was fired and arrested within a 3-hour span. My employee took a customer's vehicle, a built '73 Corvette, out for a test drive after fixing the water pump on it. It was his first week of working for me. That car was a good buddy of mine's. My buddy worked at a local drag strip. He was not happy when he saw his own darn car with his name signed on the roof pull up to make a pass. He told the guy in tech to not let it pass, and he called me. I showed up and watched my buddy confront him about why his car was at the strip. Then I walked out of the office and told the guy he could find his own ride back home and that he no longer had a job. Was that a rough move? Maybe. Was I proud of myself? Hell yeah. Not sure what the idiot was thinking. Taking a car with a guy's name on it and a sticker for the drag strip to that drag strip. Talking to the guy whose name is on the roof. I don't think he quite understood how guys work. Within the week, every mechanic around us had heard what had happened, and I heard the guy applied for a job at another shop like a month later. I doubt he was hired. I had to manage a bunch of contractors cabling the building. We had 12 of them. They were just a bunch of guys, no experience required kind of job, who applied first. Since we needed them urgently, no real interviews had been conducted. One of them was caught stealing food from the employee fridge. He did it for a week. He would even open boxes and taste what's inside before choosing the right one. The other one left for a smoke and returned 6 hours later. His excuse was that he suddenly decided to buy an iPhone and went to the city to do so. I was the assistant manager of a pizza chain. The manager hired an employee who I can only describe as a smelly moose. A big animal in your way that smells like fertilizer. He was our new delivery driver, and unfortunately 2 days into the job we caught a nasty rainstorm. He took it upon himself to pull the most fake, theatrical fall while leaving the building that I swear you couldn't script it for Life Alert without landing $1 million deal. I saw the whole thing happen. The moose didn't see me. He fell by slowly lowering himself onto his elbow, looked around for a witness to his crap show, and crying out like he'd just shattered his whole back. He immediately started chanting, "My arm! Ow! My arm! Ow! Ow!" So all of us cooks piled around him and asked why he was okay, as he was rolling all over the front entrance and all around making a scene. He finally gets up while holding his elbow, like it's been shot by a bullet overseas, and says he's fine and needs to take the night off. Okay, we say, and his mum comes to pick him up. Not 2 days later, we get slapped with a lawsuit asking that we pay for his shoulder surgery. It's a good thing that the owner lawyered up because that SOB had hurt his shoulder years before and they wanted money to help with hospital bills. Ah, America, where people do crazy, stupid stunts to be able to afford medical care. Not quite as scummy as some of the crash victims who, for the same reason, sued their rescuers in the "When Did Doing the Right Thing Horribly Backfire" video on this channel. So, my mum, retired now, was a doctor who had her own private practice. At one time, she had 2 assistants who helped her with scheduling and basic things like blood tests and paperwork. This meant that these assistants can view patient files. Mind you, that my mum and both her assistants were Vietnamese. This'll be important later. One of the assistants was younger and basically had the job because her mother was a family friend. She had a habit of slacking off and going on random smoke breaks, but my mum overlooked it because she valued her friendship with the family friend. One day, a white female patient came in. On the chart or something, it stated that she was not married but had 4 kids. While the lady was standing there checking in for her appointment, the younger assistant said in Vietnamese to the other one, "What a hussy, 4 kids and she's not married. I bet we're going to be treating her for all sorts of transmissible diseases." That was when the patient responded in perfect Vietnamese, "I'm divorced. Also, my fiancé is Vietnamese, so I know your language very well. I want to talk to the doctor now." Holy crap. From what I heard, a crap storm ensued. My mum was so embarrassed, and after seeing the patient, she got into a shouting match with the assistant. The assistant was fired on the spot. That is, after a lot of yelling, pounding, and police were threatened to be called. Eventually, karma did catch up to the assistant, because it turned out she was stealing prescription medicine from the office. This was revealed when my mum and the other assistant did an inventory check. Police were actually called that time. I don't know what happened next since I was a kid when it happened, but I'd like to imagine sweet karmic justice was served. In conclusion, don't talk crap in another language. You never know who speaks it and it could send your butt to jail. I was the charge nurse on duty. One of the new graduates injected cough syrup with codeine in a woman's IV. She called me hysterical. When I got to the unit, the patient was short of breath. I called the rapid response team and she was transferred to ICU. When the team arrived, the nurse was too hysterical to answer their questions and I had to pull everything I could from her chart. After the patient was taken to the ICU, I asked the nurse how this happened. She said she was too stressed out to realize what she was doing. There are a lot of problems with this response. First, if you need help, it's okay to ask. Second, we're required to double-check that we have the right patient, right medication, right route, right dose, right time. Third, when you scan the medication, it says right there that it's oral. I felt bad for her because she was obviously sorry about it, but I felt like she needed more training. The hospital decided not to give her more training and instead wrote her up and kept her on the schedule. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not a manager or anything. The person was my equal, but apparently I had to babysit. Anyway, working fast food, we have all these little procedures to minimize the amount of cash in the till in case we're robbed. $50 or $100 notes don't go in the till, ever. The person working the register had been there for just over a month, so not particularly watching. He shouted out, "What do I do with a $100 note, mate?" They're rarely used in Australia. I yell back, "Same as a 50, meaning it does not go in the till. So this person brings it up on the register as a 50, gives change for a 50, and then gets teed off at the customer who's demanding another 50 in change. Then he frickin' tries to pin the blame on me. I remember working for Domino's. Delivery drivers aren't supposed to take $100 notes from customers even when the order is a mammoth one. I got into a proper shouting match with the store owner because I took 2 $100 bills from a $180 delivery order. I'm not going to refuse legal tender and reload a $180 order into my car. The worst part is knowing if I'd refused $100 when I got back to the store, I would have got given crap for refusing them. Fortunately, I was bulletproof in that job. We delivered to a really sketchy housing apartment area, and I was the only driver with the stones to go in there after dark. I manage a restaurant and apparently it's hard as frick to keep a dishwasher. The most memorable one stole a pig's skull. It would have normally been thrown out after the chef took his customary photo, and she could have asked for it, weird as it would have been, but she stole it and put it in her backpack, which was bulging. Employees' bags were checked by management before they left. I found the skull and the chef was mad. First person I ever fired. For stealing a pig's skull. My dad is the manager of a car dealership. One of the finance managers effed up the paperwork and had to redo it. The customer had signed the effed up paperwork. Instead of calling the customer back to re-sign the new paperwork, he thought it was a brilliant idea to sign it himself, as the customer. The customer was a lawyer. The finance manager was obviously fired. That sounds like it had the potential to be a very expensive screw-up. I wonder if this particular lawyer was satisfied with the firing, or if he saw his opportunity to take the dealership for a monumental amount of cash and seized it with his cold, dead, lawyerly hands. If anyone reads this and worked for me at any point, they'll know exactly who I am and who this was. I used to work as an assistant manager at a small theme park over the summers during college. So I was maybe 21 or 22 and didn't give a crap about the job as a potential career. It was a tough spot to be in to manage 160 16 to 24-year-olds. This one kid was a ride attendant and a total D-bag. Rumors were he kept texting instead of watching the rides. I never caught him though, and he talked in fake accents to hit on girls while he was at work. These girls were like 14, by the way. I kept telling him to stop and to actually focus on work, and he'd always give me some "I'm so hard" teenager's response because he clearly owned the world. Finally, on his last day, a family comes up to me, teed off. Mum, dad, and 3 kids, who were also Australian. Turns out the kid was talking to them in a fake Australian accent and kept saying derogatory things to the family because he thought they were also talking in a fake accent. I leveled with them and said I can't stand the kid because he's a butthole and to come with me. I'll get them to the front of whatever ride they all wanted to get on. Yeah, even the parents, because parents like rides too. I walk up to the platform where the kid is texting again and go up to him. "Do you not understand company policy?" He was smirking and said, "What, you're gonna fire me on my last day?" I grabbed his badge, threw it about 140 feet into the woods. "Yeah, I am. Get the frick out." A few people waiting to get on the ride started clapping. Best day of my summer that year. I had to manage a Target cafe one year because our manager had a stroke. Anyway, one tool would not wash anything. I'd go to Pan Pizzas and find the pans on the shelf were slimy with grease, gelatinous bread and cheese mixtures, and smelled like death every time I worked with him. I'd tell him to do his crap, get upper management in, but they didn't give a crap, so he'd go back to watching his anime on his PSP instead of working. He was the laziest freaking piece of crap I've ever had the misfortune to meet, and they wouldn't fire him. Oh my god, seriously. He caused us to have bad health scores. It still makes my skin crawl. I caught him throwing pans in the trash instead of washing them before our manager finally came back. Bless that man. He barred that moron from our area and crawled up the management's pee-pee holes for not supporting me. It's been 4 years and I still hate that colossal moron with every fiber of my being. I used to manage a gas station and convenience store. I started my day at 5 a.m. and I had a second shift person call out, so I was stuck there till 10 p.m. Or so I thought. About 30 minutes before my third-party person was supposed to start, he also called out. I was stuck there for a total of 23 hours without a single break before a manager from another store came in to relieve me. Before I left, I called my regional manager and told him and his company to go and F themselves, and I quit. Okay, this is simple, but it has to be done this exact way, so here's the instruction page. Follow these 4 steps exactly. Now, let's practice a few times. Practiced a few times? Okay, great. Show me how to do it. They demonstrate the steps. Do you have any questions about how to do this? Nah, I'm good. Okay, if you get lost, just grab this page and follow these steps. Yeah, no problem. 2 weeks later, discover a huge problem. Why was it done this way? Well, I didn't really know how to do it. Grabs page. You follow these steps. And anyways, you demonstrated it and told me you were good to do it. Why didn't you bother to pull out this page or ask for more help? Well, I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing. But you clearly didn't know. I swear to God, I almost slapped her. Follow the 4 fricking steps in front of you. I was night manager at a gas station at 19, and my boss hired a D-bag for me to train. I swear he cared more about his appearance in his blue jumpsuit than doing any real work. On the phone with his crew most of the shift, cars lined up at full serve while he was inside checking his hair. One night I came in to close the store only to find it closed an hour before we actually close. He had had a party at the station and was dancing on the roof of his car, holding a wine cooler in his hand while talking on his phone. Like 20 of his friends were all there with him, dancing to loud crap music and smoking green herb, while customers were honking for service. I fired him on the spot and kicked everyone out and opened the store back up to finish the shift, offering free coffee to customers who were inconvenienced. My boss sees me at work the next day and says I had no right to fire the D-bag, lets him keep his job with only a written warning and writes me up for giving away free coffee and wanted to dock it from my pay. I quit at the end of my shift and I was told I could use them as a reference if I wanted, as I was a good worker. First reference call he got from my new job, he told them, "John has a problem following authority and makes his own rules." Ooh, I have a semi-relevant story. Used to work in a body shop. Waterborne paint was the hip new thing. We brought a new spray booth for around $50,000, including installation and shipping and stuff. The manager of the install team was a total fricking idiot. Supposedly, he had been working this job for a while and was trusted with running the operation. In the week that he was there, everything he did wrong. I could go into great detail about his shenanigans, but for the sake of keeping things short, the tipping point was when he dropped a $20,000 computer-controlled air conditioner and airflow module from 10 feet up, damn near on top of one of his own guys. Then he tried to tell us that it was still okay, even though we could clearly see damage. My boss had a lengthy discussion with the boss of the guy, and I have a feeling he's no longer employed. A new crew was brought in and finished the job with no issues at all. To be fair, if I dropped a piece of equipment that was worth that much, my first instinct might also have been to deny. But yeah, I would never hire a clumsy idiot like me for that kind of job in the first place. I run a recruitment and headhunting agency in Sydney. One of my business developers sits there in the meeting with one of the largest marketing automation companies in the world and starts spilling secrets of a few of their competitors who we also frickin' work for. I have preferred supplier agreements with both, and this idiot thought it was okay to share this specific piece of information with the competition. I asked him to please leave the meeting. The director I was speaking to could tell I was livid and agreed not to act on the information. I had to call the other client and explain what had happened. He nearly ripped my head off, but explained this would change the relationship as he could tell I was being honest about everything. PSA clients are now exclusively mine and my business partners. When I used to work in a truck stop, I came as close as I ever did to firing someone on the spot. If you've ever been around truckers or a truck stop, you'll notice that it can be a pretty diverse lot. It's good money for those willing to do it, which includes a ton of immigrants. In my time, I'd dealt with tons of people from Southeast Asia, India, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. By and large, they were great people and caused us the least amount of trouble. I always used to joke around with one of our regulars who was from India that he was torturing us when he'd warm up the food his wife would pack for him in our microwave. Some of the stuff he had was amazing and would make you hungry just from the smell. We'd hired a new cashier, and from the beginning I had the feeling she wouldn't last, but I'd give her a chance. A week or so later, while working on some crazy thing for an upcoming visit from higher-ups, she made a snide remark over our radios that we wore, but the word I stopped listening at was raghead. You see, we all wore radios with earpieces to make communicating back and forth easier. The other truck stops at our exit used the same system and occasionally you could hear them. Also, every district manager in our company and all senior management had them, as did our secret shoppers. So this was a huge deal. I pulled her into the office and told her in no uncertain terms was she to use that term or any other term like it over the radio or in person again, or she'd be out the door with no questions asked. This was her only warning she'd get on that. She ended up pulling a no-show next week on the store manager, and with what I'd told him about the radio incident, when she did call in the next day, he told her to find new employment. What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? High school girlfriend and I used to make out on her bed with the door locked while her parents were out there, under the impression that we were studying. Heavy kissing, and at some point she says, "Cut that out, your breath stinks." I started kissing her neck and she slowly wrapped her legs around my thigh. A couple of minutes later, starts breathing heavily. Couple of minutes after that, her legs tighten around my thigh, and a couple of minutes after that, she suddenly goes rigid, eyes roll up until I see whites, rapid breathing, exhaling heavily. I panic. And this is my moronic thought process, since all the blood's left my brain. She's choking. I should give her CPR, but she said no kissing her mouth. So I close my lips around her nose and blow like a trumpet. She starts coughing immediately, but she's too polite to cuss me out, says she needs a drink of water and leaves the room. We continued to go out for about 6 years after that. In conclusion, didn't realize girlfriend was having a great time, thought she was dying, tried to save her by blowing sewer breath straight into her nose. I'm an idiot. I lost my virginity to my first girlfriend. I was about 16 at the time and was invited to stay the night because her dad was on a business trip. I was excited because we'd talked a bunch about doing it, and I was finally ready to lose my virginity. I get to her house and we're straight to action. She pulls down my pants, and my eggplant is as limp as a top ramen noodle. She did mouth stuff for about 30 minutes until I could at least get half a chub. I got on top and started ramming away. I didn't really know what to do with my hands, and at the time I know that people pull hair while doing the deed. So I crap you not, I stare down at her and take my 2 hands full of her hair on both sides and just pull in a downward thrust while I'm ramming away. Sometimes I think of this moment and want to disappear. I almost completely erased this memory. So I was young and I had my first boyfriend. We were experimenting in the bedroom, and I really wanted him to think my hoo-ha tasted nice, so I would literally rub strawberry fricking flavored lip gloss into my vajayjay. There's no way he didn't know. I thought it was such a genius idea that I had to share it with my fellow women. So I wrote it down and passed a note in class to one of my friends. It dropped on the floor and all the boys read it and started screaming laughing. Strawberry Lips was my new name, and I cried for a week. This was with a girl I dated in high school. My dad was getting drunk at a block party, so I got the idea to take a ski boat and go for a romantic boat ride. So we park in the middle of the lake and start making out and stuff. We notice our feet getting wet. The boat was sinking, so I start freaking out, bailing water out with cups, sopping it up with my t-shirt and wringing it out of the boat, just freaking panicking. Right before I accept the fate of my dad's $12,000 inboard motor ski boat and calm down, I remember that I didn't put back the drain plug before dropping it in the water, so I replaced it and drove back. I think aiming for getting laid and nearly sinking your dad's boat is a pretty unsurpassed level of financial disaster on a first date, although I'm sure we'll see many cases of emotional and reputational destruction as we proceed through the topic. Started dating 3 months before sophomore year ended. Once summer started, I completely ghosted her. Skipped to the first week of junior year and I thought we were still together. You can imagine how she reacted when I approached her for a kiss. The shame is still real to this day. Told my first real girlfriend that I'm glad she wasn't the most beautiful girl in the world, so I didn't have to worry about every guy trying to steal her. The letters I've written. Oh, those letters. 15-year-old me thought he was deep and romantic. He wasn't. I hope they don't exist anymore. She started to ignore me at school. This was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks after we started dating. I called her house like 6 or 7 times one afternoon after school until her mum picked up, who was basically furious because I'd been hanging on the line. I explained to her that Alexa was ignoring my calls, and I hear in the background, "Alexa, why aren't you answering the phone?" To which she replies, "Because he's weird and he just keeps calling." I hung up the phone and went to my room. I carved her name in my wall with a pen. I still cringe about it to this day. I was walking her home, anticipating kissing her for the first time at her doorstep, and I kept licking my lips because I didn't want to kiss her with a dry mouth. Halfway to her house, she looks at me and says, "Stop doing that." I realized I probably looked really creepy. Broke up with her because my best friend told me to. We were perfectly fine together, but I guess I kinda worshipped the guy and his advice. He later tried asking her out when we split. We were all 14 to 15. Ugh, I'd honestly forgotten this memory until I saw the topic. My first date to a movie, we saw Titanic because that can only end well. We, as horny youngsters, aren't watching the movie, but instead making out and moaning in probably the 3rd row of a packed theater. I'd never made out before, I assumed moaning was involved. So cringy and so gross. My first kiss in the movies was at The Bounty Hunter. It was interesting because I also got my first BJ a few minutes later in the same spot. I remember 4 things. 1. My parents and her parents were 2 rows in front of us. 2. The looks of disgust on the old couple's face 4 seats down. 3. She swallowed and it was way too much sensation for 16-year-old me. 4. Gerard Butler was in it. Declined staying the night because I was, and I quote, "wearing a skirt and I didn't want it to ride up while I was sleeping." I licked her face to be random. God, that hurt to reimagine. Please don't mention hybridized eating utensils. He took me to Olive Garden and bought me that meat lover's lasagna. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called, and when we got back to his place, I wanted to show him how appreciative I was, so I gave him my first BJ. Turned out I wasn't ready for that job and I threw up the entire lasagna on his junk. God help me, I can't believe I'm finally sharing this story. That is horrible, but I'm sure there's a meat lover's joke in there somewhere. After I saw Eric propose to Donna on that 70s show, I went out and got a 25-cent ring from the local Pizza Hut and proposed. At school, in front of everyone. I was 16. I'm glad you could all share a cringe with me. To answer the burning questions, she did say yes. We didn't last, though. Sorry, no happy ending here, just teenagers doing impulsive things. I tried to defend her honor, and I got the crap kicked out of me by 3 guys. I earned cred for taking a beating, but she thought we should just be friends after witnessing that. We took a break, and I posted a video to Creep by Radiohead with the caption, "For that special someone." Oh, I almost cringed off my chair writing this. I was 17. We had just had a fight. I drove to his house and blasted "Scars" by Papa Roach from my car and just stood awkwardly at the end of the driveway waiting for him to come out. I really wish this weren't true. He did come out, but only to tell me I'm overreacting and he'll see me at school on Monday. Be right back, gonna go curl under the blankets to hide from the memories. I let him play with me down there at school with no idea the people at the next table could see. I told her I loved her within the first 24 hours at the school parking lot. My friend accidentally whimpered, "I love you," as he climaxed while losing his virginity. Talk of the school, apparently. She showed me a half-undressed pic and I was too embarrassed to look at it. After the first date of going to the movies, I never put my arm around her because I was too scared. We sat in my driveway and she didn't say goodnight because she was waiting for me to kiss her. I did nothing, so she finally kissed me. In defense mode, I licked my lips all the way around my tongue like Scooby-Doo does with the cotton candy in the theme song intro. I even did the kill me. I hit my girlfriend with my car. It was a complete accident. We're still friends, and it's a story that still comes up in conversation every now and again. Look, people, the author here has his flaws. What are they? Oh, I don't know. They sing in the shower. Sometimes they spend too much time volunteering. Occasionally, he'll hit his girlfriend with his car. So sue him. No, don't sue him. That's the opposite of the point I'm trying to make. Well, she said that she thought we'd be better off just being friends, so I decided that I needed to do some big grand gesture to prove my love. It always worked in the movies, so what could go wrong? I practiced singing the song for weeks on my ukulele and figured that I would wait until after her softball practice was done and surprise her. I sang You're Beautiful by James Blunt. I made sure a couple of days before that I completely copied his hairstyle in the video. Except because it was 2006, I dyed it completely black and tried to do an emo version of it. It's a freaking miracle anyone talks to me after that. Obviously, it didn't work. My only saving grace was that it was a drizzly April day. I thought that just made it even more romantic, and the only people who actually saw it was her and two of her teammates. They looked at me like I had 3 heads when I was singing, and then the second I finished, she turned bright red and yelled, "What the frick?" And her teammates laughed for a solid 5 minutes. I was so mortified I couldn't move. Some points. I wasn't a terrible singer, but I wasn't good. It didn't help that I sometimes added intentional breaks in my voice to make the song more emotionally powerful or something dumb like that. After I was done and stood in horror as her friends laughed at me and she stormed away, I kind of did a sad George Michael-esque walk in the rain to my car as I contemplated what would be easier, moving school districts or just driving off a cliff. We weren't friends after that. It was super embarrassing for her, and everyone teased her for months by singing James Blunt songs to her. I definitely had it worse, but high school kids are jerks. It also didn't help that about 2 weeks after, we were assigned as lab partners and she raised her hand and asked the teacher if she could switch partners, and the whole class snickered. It seems sweet reading the story, but really it was super creepy and I put her in an impossible spot. If anything positive came from it, I never had any troubles approaching women at bars because I already knew what the worst possible thing that could happen was, so it was only uphill from there. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My first makeout session with someone was with my first girlfriend. We were in her bedroom, turned out the lights, and went at it on the floor of her room. After a while, I feel something wet on my face. I didn't want to stop, so I just ignored it and carried on. She noticed it too and decided to turn on the light because something is really wet on our faces. The light comes on and turns out I'd had a massive nosebleed and there was blood everywhere. I was covered in it, she was covered in it, and there were bloodstains all over her room. If that wasn't embarrassing enough, when she went to the bathroom to clean up, her mum caught her in the hallway. She saw the blood and immediately screamed. Her assumption was that I was beating her daughter up and I got chucked out of the house. Took a lot of time and explaining for me to show my face there again. I also lost my virginity to the same girl to the song Kool and the Gang's Celebrate. That was cringy as heck too. I used to take laps around the playground and slap stickers on her butt. I don't know what I was thinking. I got us matching dog tags with our anniversary on it after dating for around 6 months, and I would secretly get very sad when he wouldn't wear his. Guilty of this too. After we broke up, he posted a video on Facebook of his friend throwing it in the air so he could shoot it. My God, I cried a little. I was 17. For the record, I grew up in Mississippi. Super American in the country. I was upset when it happened and I didn't even respond to him. Should have saved the video to make a meme, but I don't have a Facebook anymore and it was a long time ago. It was pretty funny looking back. I was super shy back in the day and I really liked this guy who had weirdly flirted with me in one of our classes. He told me I looked like some random celebrity when I wore my hair down and how hot she was, so I never wore my hair up again for the entirety of school. I replied later by slipping a note in his locker but didn't sign it. A few days after that, I threw in a t-shirt I thought he would like. He didn't know who it was from until weeks later when he finally wore it to school to see if anyone said something. My BFF at the time did and he realized it was me. Super creepy on my end. We ended up dating for a day before we broke up because we were stupid kids. Now 15 years later, we reconnected and are now married. So, totally worked as planned. A girl that I was about to start dating mentioned she really wanted to go to New Zealand at some point in her life, to a group of people, not even just to me, so I immediately priced plane tickets and lodgings to New Zealand for our honeymoon. Then, unbelievably, before we actually started dating, I told her that I'd priced our honeymoon. My defense was that if things did work out, New Zealand was so expensive I'd have to start saving then. We still dated, but only for about 2 months, and neither of us have been to New Zealand. I let my mum purchase custom matching airbrushed shirts of 2 people kissing, with my girlfriend's and my name on them. I'd report my mum to CPS if she suggested that. I met the love of my life at age 17, aka I started getting my brains effed out for the first time. She was not shy talking about her prior boyfriend who had a super huge hog that she claimed was very painful. Of course, there were other details about their relationship that she shared too, and she was complicated and we had a lot of fights which I couldn't get my head around. At some point, I decided it would be a good idea for him and me to talk and compare notes. So, I wrote him a letter proposing this. Mutual friends reported that he was utterly flabbergasted by this, but he approached me and said, "What would you like to talk about?" I think I babbled for 20 minutes after that, but I have no further recollection. Looking back, what the frick was I thinking? That is a very bold move, but honestly, I think I can say that it was the best possible reaction you could have gotten from him under the circumstances. I think most people could have reasonably expected silence or violence. Incidentally, that's my band name. I was so nervous on the way home. Being 14, his dad drove us to my house to drop me off. I leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. A quick peck, and then I threw up his mum's fajitas all over myself. We finally did the deed when at a party at my friend's house whose parents were home. The mother knocked on the door and said, "What's going on?" We didn't stop. I was too immature to talk about us one day doing the deed, so I'd giggle and say, "Duh, you know." Had my first relationship at age 17. We were each other's first for everything. Basically only ever gave him hand fun times because he wasn't very hygienic. He insisted on keeping his underwear on, so I'd have to rub him over his boxers. He'd splooge inside his boxers and then leave them on for the rest of the day. The odd time he didn't have boxers on, he'd grab a sock and splooge inside of it, and throw it in the laundry pile. His mum did all of the laundry. So disgusting every time I think about it. He French kissed me after eating a bacon double cheeseburger with onions and all sorts of other stinky stuff. I told him I had a bad experience with French kissing with a guy before him, lies, he was my first kiss obviously, and I would appreciate it if he never did it again. Bonus cringe, I rubbed Vapor Rub near my eyes to make myself cry when I broke up with him and told him I was overwhelmed and needed to focus on school. I was in 8th grade. Back in 8th grade, I could not wrap my head around the obvious signals he was giving me that he was not as into the relationship as I was. I was extremely clingy and would draw doodles of us and write the mushiest notes to him on the daily. I would quiz him on what he liked to talk to me about on AIM every night, fishing for compliments from him constantly, making up new pet names every week. My best friend was dating his best friend, who most likely felt the same reluctance due to intensity, and we would arrange double dates that were mostly me and her trying to find a way to corner the boys and make out, which was extremely creepy behavior looking back on it. Reading my journal from that year is horrifying. I wish I could go back and apologize for the cringe. If you're reading this, sorry about that crap, Mitchy Poo. I know I'm not alone in the shame of horrible obsessive behavior. Since so many people have asked, I've dug up my journal I mentioned from my basement storage. Kinda wish I'd actually buried it reading it again. The entry I'm posting seems to condense how awful I was into a short and terrible package. How can someone so terrible be so popular? Hopefully the real world isn't like that. Sigh, spelled out in the book. I heart Mitch. On AIM, AOL Instant Messenger tonight, I asked if he liked the semi-French and he was extremely vague. Maybe I'm going too fast. I hope he liked. I thought I might have seen him wiping his mouth on his sleeve. How terrible would that be? At least he loves me back. I really hope I'm not a bad kisser. I love kissing. So if I was bad at it, wouldn't it be kind of hypocrisy or ironic? I don't know. What scares me is that high school is next year. Well, I think I can probably experiment with Mitch. I don't think he'd mind, smiley face. I've never made out with someone before. I wonder what it's like. Is it gross? Is it like animalistic, like grrr? Mitch is so sweet. I want to be with him all the time. Asterisk, groan in pleasure, asterisk.
When we were watching the movie at Tom's house, where I got the semi-French, he put his hand on the curve of my waist and it felt so good. It took all I had to not just start making out with him right then. I think that's like a pleasure point on women. I'll have to find out where his is. No, I'm not going to start groping his crotch. Something a little more innocent, please, with a Z. Although me and all my friends have this inside joke about how I'm his leather lady. Lol, can you imagine? Whoosh. Kiss me, Mitch, now. I want to talk to him so bad, but it's kind of late. I'm going to have to find a really good place for this journal. I don't really know who I'm writing to. Hopefully not my future kids. They'll be all like, gasp, Mom was really bad. I'm not bad, I just have lust issues. Lol. To the person who's reading this, don't judge me.
I was walking her home in our neighborhood. She says her parents aren't home. I say, cool, you have the whole house to yourself. And I walked back home, wondering if I'd ever get the chance to touch her chest. To answer the big question, yes, I did, eventually. Then we did more and were pretty bad at it. Then she faked a stalker in order to drive a wedge between me and my best friend, so I stopped seeing her. Up and down experiences all round, but hey, I got to do stuff to her for a while, once I caught on. We'd been texting back and forth, so I knew going to his house I'd lose my virginity. The guy opens the door wearing a full suit for the occasion and escorts me holding my hand into his bedroom. Jesus Christ. To give some context, it wasn't his first time. We'd been dating for around 2 months. I was determined and did go through with the deed. And what happened after was way worse than the suit. The guy had apparently told the entire neighborhood he was getting laid, and 3 or 4 of his friends broke into the house through the terrace in the middle of the deed. I promise I'm not making this up. After the whole episode was over, he left at the friend's party without inviting me. So he wasn't really a gentleman after all, as the suit had suggested. A couple of days later, we broke up. At the time, I felt horrible, but now it makes for the juiciest story. First real girlfriend in high school, we used to talk over the voice calls on MSN Messenger late at night. She just wanted to hear my voice, and I very quickly ran out of things to say, so she said I should just read whatever book I had around. She spent the next 30 minutes listening to my Your New Getaway Computer and How to Use It booklet. What are the funniest things you see posted by your no-filter friends on social media? She's caught up in a pyramid scheme, talking about how great it is not to work on a Monday. Friends is a strong word, more like Facebook acquaintances. But one twin just slept with the other twin's boyfriend. He's taking me out tonight. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Men are all the same. Such frickin' pigs. Ugh. Oh, me and him are going to look at puppies today. Frick it. Enjoy your life with that new B-word. See if I care. Movie night Saturday with boyfriend. So nice to have someone stay in with you when you don't want to go out to the bars. Frick everything. Frick guys, they all want the same thing, and I'm fricking done. I kid you not, this crap has been going on with them very publicly for maybe 2 years now. But then again, the only reason I'm still friends with her is for my sick viewing pleasure, so who's really losing here? This high school friend of mine, I'm 42 now, so is she, meets the man of her dreams on Tuesday. Oh my god, I've met the one! He's at her house cooking for her by Thursday. Romantic dinner at home with my man. I love you, babe. Complete with pictures of a really basic pasta dish. The weekend is spent taking her 10-year-old daughter from another marriage to Disneyland or beach or other cool outing. Look at Mr. X and my little girl bonding. He's father material for sure. Haha. By Monday, it's all gone to crap. Once again, I guess you can never really know someone. Thanks again, men, for being such buttholes. I guess I'm just a forever alone kind of girl. 2 weeks later, it's the same thing, different guy. Lather, rinse, repeat. Every second of it plays out on her wall for the whole world to see. It's a train wreck and I can't stop watching. And I have to add this. Last Tuesday, the same girl posted a picture of the guy she was having dinner with. The caption read, "Love of my life." Today, Saturday, she posted that she's now engaged along with photos of her engagement ring. She's known him for 6 fricking days. The saga continues. I wish I had this much free entertainment from my friends when I was younger and on Facebook constantly. It wouldn't have felt like such a waste of time. I mean, it would have been, but it wouldn't have felt like it. So, this guy, screw it, we'll call him Mike because that's his name, dips out, leaves his wife, and bangs a super hot 20-something. This girl, let's call her Kay, is my ex-wife's nemesis. She had worked for me at a bar as a waitress and was always flirting with everyone. Ex-wife was convinced I was doing her for a while until she found out about Mike. While still hating her, she finally believed me. So time passes, we move, Mike and Kay are together for about 2 years. I'm divorced, my ex-wife moves back home and actually starts dating the new manager of the bar I used to manage. I'll refer to him as C. He's a really good guy and a friend. He even called and talked to me about it first, even after 2 years of divorce, because we used to go fishing together and were drinking bros in our early 20s. Him and Mike are super great buddies nowadays, as when I left, I guess they just started hanging out with each other. A lot. This has led to an absolute crap storm on Facebook recently, because both Kay and ex-wife think the other is screwing their man. I never thought Kay was the jealous type, and my ex-wife was fairly cool up to a point, when she started cheating on me and then got all paranoid that I was cheating too, apparently. Now every time Mike or C go out, a war erupts in the comments between the women. I've noticed a trend that whichever of the two posts first, she's apparently the lying working girl. Stop posting on my man's fricking profile, you fricking hussy, etc. A few of the best parts. Mike leaves town frequently, bangs other 20-somethings, comes home, gets busted, crap goes down on Facebook. She's got albums, still labeled, Mike's a fricking scumbag, which are full of the texts that she screenshots and sends to herself. Yet, I love my baby so much about 5 times a day on her wall. C is a full-blown alcoholic, as in 18-pack a day kind of guy. Then he tops it off with a bottle of Sailor Jerry. He cheats on a fairly regular basis with the girl I dated before my ex-wife, if he's not on one of his 30-day cleanses for probation, every 6 months or so. I know about his cheating because my brother still lives there and goes fishing with Mike and C all the time, and she tags along too. I keep telling my brother to get a picture of them all together just so he can post it up on Facebook and tag every fricking friend he has in that town in it. But he hasn't given in to the dark side quite yet. Which is surprising because he hates all 3 of those women because they hate his wife for pretty much no reason. She's great. Maybe it's because she's actually happy. Plus, Kay is hot as frick and it's bikini season. Selfies all day long. I've got a guy I knew from high school who's obsessed with Herbalife. He even tagged his darn wedding photos with Herbalife, and on all of his photos of him on his honeymoon with his wife, he had an Herbalife t-shirt or hat on. At some point, I wouldn't have been surprised to see Herbalife advertisements all over his wedding reception photos. This is my little daughter, AmITheA. Just kidding. In 24 hours, I will be deleting Facebook. Real friends will know how to contact me. I'm so sick of all the attention-seeking and drama-filled behavior on here. I've tried everything, but this is the only way. Inbox me for my number, but only if you're a true friend. Peace, Facebook family. It's been real. My friend posted this 3 days ago. Yep, there's a former business associate of mine who posts this every few weeks. He's an older gentleman who failed a mayoral run, constantly posts religious warnings and overall voices his opinion on everything. Then if he posts something that gets too much negative attention, he's all, well, I'm quitting Facebook. A week goes by and he's right back at it. Deleting your Facebook is the new running away from home. We all know you're doing it for attention, and we all know you'll be back. I knew a girl in college who gave up Facebook for Lent. Then, every time there was a party, she'd agonize about posting her pictures because I gave up Facebook, but I think God would want me to share the joy that my pictures bring. Almost everyone in the dorm was a theater major, and we're a largely agnostic group, so we kept telling her, Special K, no one gives a frick. Do whatever you want. You're not that great a photographer. Shut up. She failed Lent. Oh, I don't know, my friend who only drops vague hints at the hope for sympathy. Sometimes people make me really angry. I just want to go to bed and forget this day happened. Oh my gosh, I know the feeling. What's wrong? I'm sorry, what's going on? You and me both. Let me know if you need something. Let me know if you need anything. Sorry I haven't responded. It's just personal and I'm not going to talk about it. Even more so is the little army who responds. Every fricking time. What's wrong, hon? Everything okay, sweetie? I'm here if you need to talk. You're an amazing person. Don't let anything get you down. Stop it! You're enabling this nonsense. It's always the exact same people and they never get a response. Ever. Makes me crazy. I know someone who keeps posting that her kids don't love her and are pushing her out of their lives for other people in their lives. Plot twist, it's my mother who I live with and spend the majority of my time with. When me and my roommate had a job together sitting at desks after hours with nothing to do, we'd go on my Facebook and find long conversations of people arguing and do read-throughs like a play rehearsal. Each time we'd read through as different characters like Macho Man Randy Savage or Rodney Dangerfield. This is one of the greatest and cheapest time killers I could ever suggest. My 91-year-old grandmother is calling out every family member who uses the F word in their posts and is shaming them. She's also threatening to wash their mouths out with soap like she did when they were kids. It's adorable. Yeah, I think that's genuinely hilarious. No negativity there. Although personally, up until my current age and weight advantage, I probably would have been scared enough to let it cow me into submission. My granny was a bit scary.
Frick you, dude. You fricked my girlfriend, you fricking piece of crap. Jeremy, you watch your language, young man, or I'm gonna wash your mouth out with soap when I see you.
Evidently, Peggy is desperate for more water in Farmville too. Peggy must live in Southern California. A mother of a teenager I know shared graphic images of the bruises her soon-to-be ex-husband gave her. That didn't bother me, I felt bad for her. But when she decided to add photos of her bare butt and hoo-ha with very minimal bruising on them, things got weird. She makes her daughter take down posts she thinks if there's too much cleavage showing. Incidentally, she's also complaining that people reported her photos because they don't want to face domestic abuse. I mean, I'll face it, I just don't need to see your downstairs area again, Barbara. Someone keeps reporting his photos as containing inappropriate content. The more he complains about it, the more likely I am to start joining in. By the way, it's not you, Steve, or Steven, or Phil, or Sergio, or whoever else you think you might be. You're not a beautiful and unique snowflake. Oh god, that reminds me. A while back, a guy on my Facebook accidentally posted a video of himself just cranking it, and it took almost a full day before he realized it. So for days, there were tons of posts from his various family members telling him how disappointed in him they were, how his grandmother had seen it, etc. Probably the greatest actual Facebook drama I've experienced. How the frick do you accidentally do that? It was all an honest mistake. I was filming myself thrashing the mule like normal. I had to use my laptop's built-in camera because my memory was full on my digital camera and phone. Too many self-stimulation videos, you see. You know how it goes. Got to monitor the form and correct weaknesses. Well, after I finished, I saved the file. How else am I going to re-watch it later? I can't do it in the mirror to watch myself like some low-born psychopath. Totally unrelated, I wanted to upload to Facebook a video of myself going down a water slide at Schlitterbahn. Unfortunately, I'd saved both files to the same folder and titled them Wet and Wild and Wet and Wild 2. You can guess the rest. Easiest mistake to make. It probably happens 1,000 times a day. There are lots of people chiming in to say, he probably made it for his girlfriend and then it happened while his phone was in his pocket. Super easy. Call me old-fashioned, but when I film myself working the hog, I don't save the evidence for later. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mother is the worst on Facebook. Don't even get me started on the group messages she sends to the whole family. Well, fine. Don't come to my party because you obviously don't care enough to cancel the plans you already have. And I'm like, Mom, I live across the country. I'm not going to take the day off work to come to your 3-hour-long Memorial Day party. My mom won't act ugly on Facebook, but she'll post something and call me later and say, "Did you see what I posted? Well, why didn't you like it? You should have liked it if you saw it." There's also, "I'm going to be heartbroken if you don't wish me a happy Mother's Day on Facebook." And she'll also organize family events solely for the purpose of gathering pictures for Facebook. Not kidding. She'll say, "I want to get pictures to post." One I know who's getting a 5th divorce in 12 years. I can't even begin to touch the drama surrounding that one. She's 19 and pregnant. She graduated from my high school early, but all of her posts from last night were vaguely aimed at her boyfriend and then saying, "I wonder what people from my school will think once they know I'm pregnant. They'd probably have a cow." Baby mama drama, and he always prefaces his posts by saying, "Y'all know I don't like airing my dirty laundry on here." There's a laundromat in a town near where I live that has a billboard that says, "Dirty laundry goes here, not on Facebook." I thought that was pretty clever. For a while, I was really into reading this girl's drama about how her baby daddy keeps getting arrested for assaulting people. Her posts usually fall into one of these categories. A revelatory post about the crazy things going on in her life, usually involving her baby daddy not being able to find jobs or getting fired, quitting, hating their jobs, legal issues with the baby daddy's assault charges, lack of money, just general life problems, Or B, egotistical, condescending posts about how happy she is, how wonderful life is, pictures of the baby, bragging about the baby. Or C, frick off haters, get out of my business kind of posts. My husband has this woman on his feed that he keeps around for entertainment value. She posts about two things only, it seems. Just got out of church. Sermon was beautiful today. I feel so blessed. Praise God. Sent at 11:30 a.m. Then she posts a picture of herself licking a guy's crotch. Woo! I just sucked 5 guys for some Patron. Sent at 4:30 p.m. She then posts a picture with Bible verses and something about Jesus working in her life, and then posts a suggestive picture with the end of a bottle in her mouth held at crotch level by some guy. From what I gather, this woman really loves sucking eggplant and Jesus. She desperately wants to get married, but at 38 has never had a boyfriend. She had a few suitors, but none of them matched her claim to have attended at least 2 colleges. She's a kindergarten teacher, she's religious, and she daily posts quotes from dead priests. Hey there, baby, I spent a week at Ohio State and another week at MSU. You wanna bang? No real Facebook drama, just vague booking. I'm so over it. Some people are just such buttholes. Blah blah blah, more crap about some specific person I won't name, or better yet, confront offline and in person. I'm not sure personally what it's about, but you know who you are. I love the you know who you are posts because they never involve me and I know it. But I like to post responses getting all defensive like I think it's about me, and then they get mad and tell me to F off because it's none of my business. So I can then snidely remark, I guess it isn't very clear who the people you're referring to are now, is it? In other news, I'm apparently a total butthole on Facebook. Yes, you are kind of a butt, but we forgive you because it's funny. Also, I haven't seen this kind of post since I was a teenager. I'd hope that no adults are doing it, but who am I kidding? Of course they exist. She thinks everyone should show sympathy to the Duggars, and says we should all be praying for them instead of judging. We all make mistakes, she says, but all we can do is pray and forgive. People can change. And then, one of her apparently former friends got on there and started going off about how she was judged by the lady who put the status and how she'll never forgive her for what happened after she said she'll always be there. There were over 60 comments on the status. After about the 65th comment, the status lady states she doesn't think this is a public matter, and it's inappropriate to put it all over Facebook where everyone can see. Status lady is a single mum and wants everyone to know it, is constantly complaining about not having enough money, time, or resources to help her girls. Does nothing but ask for handouts. One year around Christmas, she put on Facebook that her family is coming into town, but she doesn't have a car big enough, so does anyone have a van she can borrow? Oh, and also can someone maybe come and put some Christmas lights on the house? But you have to bring the lights because I can't afford them. Does anyone have any gift cards to Anywhere Fun? Because I would hate for them to have to sit at home the whole time without anything to do. Or the typical, this thing in my house is broke. Does anyone know someplace that doesn't charge an arm and a leg to fix it? But instead of wanting to know someplace that's cheap, she really wants someone to offer her to fix it for her for free. Because when someone comments and says, these people are good, she says, I probably won't be able to afford it, or something of that nature. 10 out of 10 would be her friend again just for the entertainment value. My friend thinks Obama is the cause of homosexuality and naughty content online. She also thinks Hillary Clinton should be strapped to a rocket and fired at the Middle East. So it's mostly standard. She's going on some snidely elitist rant about how her art is clearly so much better than that fake basic bullcrap that everyone else posts, all while ripping on this poor girl's new tattoo that she was very excited about. Yes, a dreamcatcher could be seen as a tad basic, but damn woman, it's what she wants and it's something she puts time and effort into planning out with her tattoo artist. It's also a well-done tattoo, just kind of simplistic in design. My friend posts about how he changed his lifestyle and now he's better than everyone else because he eats healthy and lost about 30 kilos, about 66 pounds. Pictures of healthy food 6 or 7 times a day. Hashtag grind, hashtag motivation, hashtag no excuses, hashtag time is now, hashtag work. My friend is reposting every single spam post. Find the I and your crush will ask you out. Multiple exclamation marks with an I in the middle. He's trying to get the love of his life to notice him. Eventually, it worked. His crush commented, Dude, shut the frick up with these posts. None of them work, idiot. Crushed his dreams forever. I know one who's currently separated from his wife and jumped into a relationship with another woman, then broke up with her after 2 weeks, so he bought himself a second used Mercedes. My cousin and I are both Syrians, and we live outside. He posts daily, either ranting about football, he's a hardcore Italian fan, so just imagine the posts when Juventus lost, and he also goes on long rants about Syria. And he literally rants about everything in Syria, starting from the regime, to the Islamic State, to the Free Army, to every other armed group over there, to the Muslims living there, the Christians, to Allah and Jesus, to the cats in the street, to the nostalgia of the old vids and pics of Syria, and specifically Homs, since we're both from there. And he has about 1,600 followers, half of them close friends with him, and mostly they're religious. You should see their comments about being offended, and he replies to every single comment justifying his posts. And I really enjoy his posts. They're funny and so spot on, and I would have shared them with you if they weren't in Arabic, because they'd lose their humor with translation, and I'm not a good translator. One girl keeps posting screen caps of the amount she's owed in unpaid child support, and tagging the kid's father in the posts. My friends are having a really tough time accepting the Caitlyn Jenner situation and are arguing that there needs to be a third restroom. Well, I guess they aren't arguing because nobody is commenting, but still. He's very sad because people don't like his selfies enough. He posts about 7 times a day on Facebook and it's always a selfie, and if he doesn't get enough likes, he posts another mopey one. Her baby daddy has been texting other women, cue screenshots of said texts, trying to get a motel with them in Ohio. But that's fine because she's not giving their unborn child his last name and he's definitely not signing the birth certificate. And it just goes on and on. An acquaintance from high school who I haven't seen in more than 20 years constantly posts his exploits with his on and off again girlfriend. Apparently she's a crystal addict, doesn't work, and will do whatever necessary to get a fix. Every week or two they're back together, talking about how much they love each other and plan to get married. Then she needs a fix. Suddenly my feed is full of him calling her a substance-addicted working girl who blows her dealer for crystal. They fight online, he drags all his friends into the drama, proclaiming he knows who his true friends are, and he's learned his lesson. He swears he's done with her and never going back. The last time it happened was about 3 weeks ago when he caught her with her dealer, and the dealer shot him in the leg. Gratuitous pics of the wound, and him at the hospital soon followed. It grazed him, nothing life-threatening. He said it was the last straw. No more of that no-good crystal hussy, he had learned his lesson. They got back together again yesterday. Someone posted about how his girlfriend of 3 years was cheating on him, and displayed a picture of the guy, tagged his girlfriend, and joined in super personal discussions on this post. Not 2 hours later, he said that people need to leave him alone and that he and his girlfriend will figure it out on their own, and that these matters are personal. Like, what? This one girl who went to my middle school made a video of her and her niece dancing to a song called Bless the Bottle, celebrating that she got the results of a paternity test back and the father is a guy who is married. They were dancing and singing along with baby bottles in their hands and throwing unused diapers in the air like it was cash. Since apparently this guy's wife works at a county job like DMV or something, so they figured this baby is going to be an 18-year payday. He still regularly compares himself to Batman and Solid Snake, is bitter about his ex cheating on him after he took her back 7 times over a year ago, claims he gets laid regularly but only posts pictures of him hanging out with underage girls, talks about all the substance users in our hometown when he himself still smokes spice, and generally just seems like he's 1 day away from going postal. Keep rocking on, Sean. I'm rooting for you. What's the worst way anyone has screwed you over? Not too terrible, but it sucked at the time. My college roommate took care of all the bills, so I just wrote him a check each month for my half, and he paid the rent, electricity, etc. Then one day, some of his friends from out of town visited for the weekend. I come home on Sunday night to find him half-packed. He says he's going with them. This kinda leaves me in the lurch since I don't have another roommate lined up or anything, and I can't afford the place on my own. But frick, I can't stop him from leaving. I suppose I could insist that he pays for another month of rent or something, but it didn't occur to me. So I said whatever and started looking for another roommate the next day. Then later that week, I get the first overdue notice. Then I get a call from the landlord. The F-word hadn't paid any bills in 2 to 3 months, so he was taking my checks, cashing them, and using the money for himself. The previous Christmas, he'd kept a friend's cat while she went home for the break. The cat stayed in his room, which was a disgusting mess. Ants eating the food that he'd left or spewed up, crap-stained underwear everywhere, just a disgusting place, so I felt pretty bad for the cat. After he had moved out, I went in there and found among the moldy plates and bugs the complete, full and overflowing cat litter box. The cat had crapped and peed in it for 6 weeks or so, and at some point just begun crapping and peeing everywhere else instead. The cat left sometime in January. He had moved out in July. Luckily, I was able to get most everything straightened out, but it was super stressful for a while and I still resent him. You understand that by law, if you ever see this person again, you're required to punch him directly in the crotch, yeah? Duly noted. On the positive side, my next roommate sold green herb, so I got a lot of it for free. When my dad passed away, his house was put up for sale at a public auction. The auction was set up by a notary. I was present at the auction, but apart from 2 other couples, no one else was. Because of the exceptionally low turnout and me being underage and not in the know about this kind of thing, the price was about a quarter of what the house was worth. It was sold. I now have to pay off a 20-year loan to be able to afford a house, while I could have had one for free. Afterwards, we found out that the notary had set up a deal with the bidding couple and forgot to schedule the sale in the official channels. Basically, no one showed up because all of 5 people knew there would be a binding sale that evening. My advice, if you're dealing with a notary or lawyer and you're not very knowledgeable in the particular field they're working in, get a second opinion. Heck, get a third if you want to be sure, because there are people out there who won't think twice about taking advantage of a 15-year-old who just became a half-orphan. The running commentary after this story was that the notary in question acted in bad faith and could probably be liable for legal action. There was no follow-up on whether justice was served, so I guess we'll never know. I moved out at 17 and had no checking account. Me and my buddy both worked 2 jobs in preparation for college expenses the next year, and we gave cash to the third roommate to handle bills and rent, only to find out months down the road that she had given not a single frick at any point or paid bills or rent for months. We kicked her the F out, and my other buddy fled as well because the cost of making it work was much too high. So I was stuck sorting the entire thing out myself. Goodbye, entire savings up to this point in my life. Hello, 3 jobs, college, and ramen every night for 2 years. I had my best friend's 14-year-old stepsister accuse me of doing the deed with her. She told all of her friends, and then when her parents found out, instead of telling the truth, she told a bigger lie. It's been almost 2 years now, and I'm still fighting the court case. My at-the-time girlfriend's mum offered me a job worth double what I was making now, but she had to interview me to make it look official for HR. I applied, but HR didn't like that I already had a job, so she told me to quit and apply again. So I quit my job and applied again, went in for the interview, and everything was great. My application was processing and I was totally going to get the job. I didn't get the job. After her and I broke up like 2 years later, she just admitted she was jealous I didn't have any debt, and she wanted me to lose my job so I'd be forced to get a loan, so I could be in debt like her and see how it feels. Don't stick your wang in toasters, or however that saying goes. Anyone else hear alarm bells at HR didn't like that I already had a job? Being claimed as a deduction for being in college while I was in the Persian Gulf, circa 1991, and end up being audited by the IRS. Having multiple utilities, gas, electric, phone, opened up in my name while I was in the Persian Gulf, and none of them being paid for, and they were in a totally different state, more than once. Having countless credit cards opened up in my name, none of the bills paid, and having a totally destroyed credit rating for 6 years, while I was in the Persian Gulf. Thanks, Mum. My mother was and is the epitome of a welfare queen. If there's any angle, trick, or scam she can get away with to get free money from someone else, or most importantly the government, she would not hesitate to lie, cheat, or steal her way into it. I was forced at 5 years old to go to the local store to spend $1 food stamp, before the credit card thing, to get her 95 cents and change so she could get something like cigarettes. I learned the hard way how she operated, and by the time I was in my early 20s, I disowned her. She moved away to Vegas to be near my sister to try and mooch off her. My sister learned after about 5 years, and my mother moved back to where I live in some vain hope that I'd forgotten. I had not. She continues to call every now and then to ask for money or to fix her car, or fix something else. Not even to ask about her grandchildren, of which I have 4 of them with my hot wife. Screw her and screw the horse she rode in on. My wife agrees, as do my children. I've never been on welfare as an adult. I work hard and pay for everything I have, and that of my children. And yes, I'm the 99%. I can only hope that people follow this advice when it comes to their credit and lives. Watch it like a hawk and do not trust anyone. I purchased a car from a buddy. Its engine was bad, but it did have a bunch of custom parts on it I was going to use on my car, which was the same model. I didn't have time to get the parts off, and it sat around for a couple of weeks. His dad got impatient and had the car junked. No one told me this was going to happen, or that there was a timetable. I asked for my money back, and the guy laughed in my face. Screw that guy, I couldn't even go to the small claims court. I never got a bill of sale, never got the car's title. I wholly blame myself for getting ripped off. Expecting people not to screw me, I was a noob at life. My girlfriend tells me she can't leave with me when I'm moving, but wants to come in 1 to 2 months when the semester is over. During this time, we talk every day. I continue to help her pay the bills, etc. 2 months pass and she says she's ready to move. Come and get me. I rent a truck, drive from Colorado to Virginia, and upon my arrival find a note in the door that she had an anxiety attack and is no longer sure she can move. No call to talk about it, no face-to-face, a note on the door. FYI, 4 weeks later she calls saying she was wrong and she loves me. I wished her well and never looked back. I mean, that seems like something done out of fear rather than malice, but yes, she should still have at least talked to you. Hope your life went forward well. I'd been dating a girl for around 9 to 10 months. We were great together, no fights, no drama, just kept it chill and had the time of our life. She got a promotion 2 hours away from where we lived and needed to move. She was nervous about the distance, but I only had a year left in school and I'd join her. Well, moving day came. She was busy working and had been living in the new spot for a week or two. I grabbed my dad's truck and my band's trailer, and with the help from my parents, we got all of her stuff loaded up and made the journey. Once we'd got everything moved out and put into the new apartment, I gave her a call to see what she'd want to do for dinner and the evening in general. She essentially replied, "I can't do the distance, sorry." I was completely stunned, and to add insult to injury, her stepdad gave me about $30 for gas after hauling all her crap 2 hours away. Took care of a very sick girl for 8.5 years. She had no responsibilities whatsoever except to do things that helped keep her healthy. She had everything she wanted and I was happy to provide it. When we broke up, she packed up all of my things, I was out of town, and then proceeded to tell horrible lies about me in a thinly veiled attempt to bully me away from fighting for my belongings. Ironically, I would have given her anything she wanted. All she had to do was ask. Over 3 years later, I'm still stunned by what happened. I was so blind. I'm not looking for sympathy here, but I was sleeping with this guy, always protected. One day, he couldn't find a rubber and convinced me he'd just been tested and was clean and wasn't sleeping with anyone else, and convinced me that we didn't need to use protection. Then he infected me with a transmissible disease. Lesson learned. Trust no one, ever. Parents got divorced, dad kicked my mum out, I was still a senior in high school. I graduate and take a job to try and save up. He decides to get a new girlfriend to spite my mum, talks crap about my mum and lets this new lady bully me. She likes to F with me by smacking a hammer on my bedroom wall really early in the morning, sneaks into my room while I'm at work and steals things from me. I came to my dad begging and crying for him to help me. He calls me crazy, tells me to lock my doors every day in my own house, and accuses my sister of doing it. I catch the girlfriend stealing from me on the last day of work and tell my dad. He kicks me out the very next day. I haven't talked to him in over 2 years and I have nightmares about him. I made him pay me back over $1,300 that she stole from me, or I'd sue her. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A long time ago, began dating a girl. The girl turned out to be a genius-level sociopath. How do I make this long story short? A member of her family engaged only in manipulations in order to control her, so it's all she learned from growing up. Her IQ was like 140 or higher. She hid it. Seemed normal to everyone. Honestly believes that everyone exists to serve her. Won't ask for things normally. If she wants something, engages in social manipulations. She's deadly patient, too. We were together on and off for a while for years. Some highlights, or lowlights in this case. She manipulated me into selling most of my possessions, then spent the money mostly on substances. Stole my bank account information, bought herself tons of crap, then something for me. The birthday present overdrew my account, starting a chain reaction of crap. I didn't find out till almost a year later. She threw out letters from the bank, but continued writing bad checks from my account. A year later, I almost received felony bad check charges, and I had to hire a lawyer for about $7,000, plus the amount of the bad checks, so that I wouldn't have anything on my record. I found out much later that she kept 6 or 7 guys on the line at all times, all for different reasons. She was long-term dating most of us because she thought we would have a future. Future doctors, lawyers, basically anyone who had a shot at making it. A couple were just because they were good to do the deed with, and I found out she went to swinger parties and used to bed about 2 random guys per month. This, of course, totally unknown to me at the time, she had me and everyone else totally fooled. After I finally sorted it out that she was no good and left, temporarily she always roped me back in until I found out the whole truth, she tried, and in many cases succeeded, to sabotage any relationship I attempted to start. She actually was able to manipulate people into spying on me, manipulate guys into hating me and trying to fight me, and stuff like that. I'd go to parties and random guys would show up and try to kick my butt, cause she had done the deed with them, then told them that I'd hit her, and so on. She even got a couple of girls to seek me out, lie, and get me to go on dates with them so they could report back to her. My phone was blocked and I'd be unable to contact them, and then I'd find out later she had been contacted by my ex and that she had sat her down and lied, saying things like I was married, I had 2 kids, I had transmissible diseases, I was cheating on the girl with the person I was dating. All of course totally untrue, but she'd present convincing evidence, then make friends with the girl and increase the cult of women who hated me. We were off and on because of this, and I didn't know that she was the cause of any of it for years. She was that darn slick. For years and years. I could go on. The craziest part was I looked back at what she said to me during our first date and realized that she was setting up manipulations that very first day that she didn't kick in until sometimes 2 or 3 years later. That crap still blows my mind. It means our first date, she was planning to screw me over in all of these ways. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a textbook sociopath. I think the worst part is actively preventing the author from escaping and getting his own life. What a piece of work. My mum made me so sick with her behavior that I ended up in the ER as a child because I was spewing blood for days. I'd developed stress ulcers. Here's just a few of some of the things she did while I grew up there. She always dumped her emotional crap on me, such as how my dad wasn't doing the deed with her anymore, how he didn't please her, and how he didn't love her anymore, and how daddy was so mean. One day while crashing at yet another stranger's house, I overheard her telling my father that she didn't love him anymore and wanted a divorce. She came into bed with me, cried, took off her wedding ring, gave it to me and says, "Daddy doesn't want me to have this anymore, you might as well wear it." Then she put it on my finger. That doesn't sound so bad reading it, but imagine all the thoughts a child would have about wearing her mother's wedding ring after hearing they are getting a divorce, and all of the responsibility placed in that moment. I ended up consoling her to sleep like she was my baby. Story of my life. I'm so sorry people like that have a license to breed, even if it means I wouldn't have existed as a result. That sounds emo, I mean it honestly and seriously. I lived with my father. Mother lied and said she had a steady job and a house, so I was sent to live with her because she had ruined my dad's credit by running up huge debts in his name without his knowledge, causing our house to get foreclosed on. She lived in a van behind an adult club. When all of my things arrived, she simply dumped them on the side of the road and I never saw them again. I spent the next year living like a homeless person at 10 years old, and she bullied me not to tell anyone. Finally, I did and my dad came up and got me, but gosh darn that screwed me up. I was a year behind in school, ill, and I lost all of my stuff. Little personal, but screw it. I just started college and I was living with my grandmother on my father's side. First time staying with this side of the family. Father never cared for me and was incarcerated for his whole life. Needed a place to stay until I got my crap together. Within a month of living there, father was released from prison and came to live there as well. I didn't know he was going to stay there as my grandmother didn't say anything as she knew I didn't want anything to do with him. Anyway, after about another month of awkwardly living under the roof, my father comes home in a car that he got from an auction. He wasn't working at the time and I assumed he was selling substances or had stolen the car. He got arrested again. A friend joined college same time I did and he got his refund. I didn't. After some investigative work, I found out my father took the refund and cashed it, and that's how he got the money for the car. Teed off, I pressed charges, and eventually my grandmother found out about it and kicked me out. I was homeless for a few days. Best friend found out about it and his parents gave me a room. In conclusion, scumbag father took my refund from the grant I received for college and cashed it to buy a car. My ex ceases our activity in the bedroom, citing how it goes against her faith and she feels guilty about it. I'm fine with this and we date for 3 more months. Everything seemed great until the end where she tells me she's 6 weeks pregnant. I'm not very good at math, but I do know 3 months is greater than 6 weeks. I don't see the problem here. Someone else got her pregnant. That's your get out of jail free card from a crazy person. Within a week of my ex-wife having an affair, she emptied the bank account clean from $10,000 and moved out of state with her new lover. I found out through his wife, and bank account records, left me with all of the debt and bills. 2 years after the divorce, she opens multiple credit cards in my name and social security number. Thankfully, I have Credit Watch and caught this. Now working on sending her to jail for ID theft and credit fraud. I had a brand new Yamaha R6 and I let my friend try it. He's experienced and wanted a new bike, so he tested my bike. He did a wheelie and of course dropped it. Totaled the bike, blamed me for not having full insurance and didn't pay a cent. Have not talked to him since. But now I have a brand new R1. Never let anyone ride your motorcycle. If you break it, you pay it is what I always tell when friends or family want to ride my motorcycle or car. I quit my job so I can watch my kids while my wife was deployed to Afghanistan. She falls for a contractor over there and dumps me. Now I am jobless, wifeless, and I'd be freaking homeless too if I wasn't living at my dad's house. Oh, and when she returns from Afghanistan, she wants full custody of the boys. And I just turned 30 today. Happy fricking birthday to me. I accidentally broke the small glass door of my closet. Dad came in, saw the shattered glasses on the floor. I told him it was an accident. He pointed his finger at me and yelled, "You're an accident!" I was 11. Just remembering what he said is depressing. This is a terrible thing to say to a kid, and sadly enough, it's distant enough from me that I chuckled a bit at the childishness of the father's response. Bad narrator. Bad. My brother is a contractor, and after offering to handle our whole home renovation, he started a demolition, then decided he was too busy to finish and abandoned the project. He just didn't show up for 2 weeks, and when I contacted him, he showed zero remorse for screwing me over. I've paid him almost $20,000 up front as a deposit for work to be completed. The renos started in June. Right now, the master bedroom has no fixtures, there's no doors anywhere, the back wall of the second floor is missing, it's October and getting cold by the way, the bathroom is gutted to the studs, the kitchen has missing walls and there are massive holes in practically every remaining wall. Before just walking off, he'd just not show up for days at a time or only work a couple of hours, then complain he was underpaid the rest of the time. On top of that, due to him having poor credit, I let him use an extension of my credit card with his name on it to purchase materials, which he then proceeded to use to buy gas, food, and booze for himself. When I asked him to stop, he agreed and then continued to do so. I'm now out $50,000 in labor and materials, and now I have to find another contractor. Let me repeat this important fact. This is my brother who's done this. My grandmother did very well in life, and in death left a sizable amount of money to the family, including me. At least that's what I thought, because she showed me a copy of her will about a year before she passed. I get a copy of the will mailed to me by my uncle's lawyer, and it has her handwriting on a new amendment, giving all her estate, her outstanding CDs and investments over to him and him alone to do as he pleases. She was in hospice care for 6 months, and I'm betting money she was high on painkillers when he convinced her to sign the amendment. I still have nothing from her, and he's a Catholic priest. Frick. Spent close to 10 years working for a guy who I considered to be like family for less than minimum wage. I helped him build his business up into a very successful entity. He had promised I would get a raise and my own store to manage. I trusted him because I'd known him since I was a child and he'd never steered me wrong before. I did everything he said, and each time I did something new that he asked for or reached a new goal, he said it wasn't done right and I'd have to do it again. I brought in a good amount of money from his clients and kept them there. Yet he said no when I said I needed more money to survive. I told him I was cutting my hours back because I had to go get another job. He said I was being selfish, and when I took time off to spend with my family and girlfriend, he said I was neglecting my duties. Told me I needed to quit or start over with reduced pay and no title. I quit. Soon after, a number of clients left as well. His wife, who ran the books, is now leaving him and his other employees have left as well. Clients continue to leave on a regular basis. The place was my life for a long time. It was my dream to have my own location. He promised it to me, but screwed me over. I lost 10 years of my life. Best thing that ever happened to me, though. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.